Hear that sound? That's the future knocking on your door. Gear up for an unprecedented experience with HomeBrew AI. An electrifying community of brainiacs, AI enthusiasts, digital alchemists, and knowledge seekers. This is where fellowship intermingles with creativity. Build bridges with fellow trailblazers, plunge into intellectual odysseys, and let your synapses jive to the cadence of progress. We're embarking on an ambitious endeavor to chronicle the singularity. So head over to HomeBrew AI, where the news is hot, the ideas are brewing in the singularity. Well, that's for you to find out.
How's it going?
Hey, Johnny. It's good. Okay, give me a second. We should be having one guy come up. We'll see how he wants to introduce himself, but that should be good. I'm always like energetic until right before these happen, and then I'm tired. It's strange.
Tired. Yeah. I've been outside doing landscaping.
Are you going to be able to turn your cam on this week? Or
Yeah.
Okay.
I just don't. Yeah.
What happened to you?
I look terrible.
Where's your city background? What happened, man? Did you move?
No, not yet. I knew.
No, did you move from your futuristic space city? You don't get it?
Oh, no. So I've had I was gonna download it, the video broadcast again yesterday, but my internet was on and off. And then today I got up and I immediately went out. That's why I look like I'm covered in sweat today. So
you look wonderful, Johnny.
Don't worry about it. Don't. Look at my hair; it's really bad. But I put a nice shirt on. I had the decency because I was just shorts, no shirt all day today. So I had the decency to at least put a shirt on.
I'm like a redneck superhero, right? Where like I just like you look in my closet and all there are is Carhartt shirts. There's nothing else. Like it's just different colored Carhartt shirts. That's it. I'm serious. There's like one collared shirt that I've only used for a few things. Okay. So a little bit to talk about as far as like the state of things and what I'm working on. We're like approaching a little milestone for myself. You know, high five to Joby Fi here. 100 followers on Twitter soon. Yeah, you know, doing okay. No, but I
saw you were around like 88, 89 yesterday.
Yeah, it's like 91 or something. But I'm learning how to do the Twitter foo or the X foo, whatever you call it, right? And I've been doing the spaces. I've just been joining ones that I see. So the goal right now is to do enough till I'm at least 100 followers, maybe 200-ish. But I figure just enough to get like a little bit of people that come in, and I'll probably be doing those kind of regularly in the mornings or maybe in the evenings. I don't know. I'm not entirely sure. But they do now have slight desktop support. So you can more or less just, what's it called? You can more or less use it on desktop, but you have to host it on a phone. Like the host has to like use the mobile app to even start it. So it's just weird. I don't know how I'm going to navigate that, but I'll figure it out. Maybe we have like a Twitter handle for HomeBrew, and maybe I could just have that host it, and then I'll run it as the co-host, but I don't fucking know. I'll figure it out. But the point I'm generally making is like we're getting to the point where we'll probably start like parabolically building, or well, at least at a steadier rate than we are now, once you're in old England there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I think then things will be a little bit more settled down, which I leave in, let's see.
On the
leaving
September
about
11th?
7 days for Chicago, right? Because I'm going up to Chicago a couple days early. I'm back to Chicago.
Just don't get shot on the way out, man. That's all I ask you.
I'm so tired. I'm so tired of going to Chicago. I'm genuinely so fucking tired. But on the 7th, I go to my sister's to Chicago, and then I'll be there until the 11th, and then I'll head out on the 11th. Ugh.
Okay. Well, so there's that, and then what else was I going to say? The main thing is like we'll probably start hosting them there. You don't have to come if you don't have the time for it or want to, but I know you played Dota with your time anyway, so you'll probably want to come anyway. So we'll probably start doing more or less 2 times a week, maybe scheduled, and then I'll probably do just a ton of impromptu ones myself to just keep growing because they're pretty fun. I have talked to some strange people though. Like we thought some of the people that come in here are fucking strange. Like it's something else over there. There
are some strange ones though.
Yeah, we've had our share of strange. It's like Discord strange, just straight up. So we're on our way as far as strangeness goes. We've got some experience, but another point to mention is that the audience is obviously bigger there. So I've got like a bunch of like 30K follower like AI tech accounts that have started following me. So like once I start posting them, they'll get more attention. So it's just a matter of coming in and being interesting. So
no, that's pretty big. Yeah,
it's weird though. Like I see how people grow, you know, on these social media, but like especially Twitter. Like I can see the path to like growing to where you get a pretty big audience. You just have to not be a douchebag, mainly.
Well, that's really hard for a lot of people, though.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about this in particular. Is the X censorship is generally like freedom of speech, but not of reach, where they'll let you say whatever you want on there and not necessarily ban you unless you're threatening to like murder people, I guess. But the problem is you just immediately get shadow banned, right? And they're working on like showing you whether or not you're shadow banned, right? But my point is that when you have a financial incentive revolving around making your living off of X, which is a lot of people are going to transition into this from various walks of life, they're going to make somewhat of a financial gain from X. So it's kind of like your freedom of speech is tailored to, it's like more directly than ever tailored to your actual financial compensation. So if you start saying unpopular things, now granted, this does make sense as far as like an advertiser's perspective, but the fact that you will get like de-boosted over it because you're saying something inflammatory or something to that effect. Granted, like there's a big like Overton window shift on X.com about like because Twitter, like you previously couldn't say anything about the whole virus thing, like anything bad.
Yeah. In YouTube, you couldn't. You could say absolutely nothing.
Now that's all you see on there. If you're in certain circles of X posters, they're just like talking about the new mask mandates that might be coming. And, you know, I'm actually pretty happy to like live in Texas because of that. Like there's like a degree of like, go fuck yourself that my state is doing where they're like, they made it like illegal for a mask mandate. I'm pretty sure they like passed like 780 something laws here in Texas recently. Not all of them good, but some of them are pretty good. They're pretty interesting. It's very like more on the conservative side of things, though, so I'm sure people fucking hate it.
I still see people wearing masks. I saw a lady at the aquarium, a dolphin trainer, wearing a mask the other day. It was just her and the dolphin.
Well,
it's like, what the fuck?
What's the dolphin has bad breath?
It's you and a dolphin. It's her and a fucking dolphin. She's not even next to the dolphin.
Why is it always the dolphin?
She's out in the middle of nowhere.
Why is it always the dolphins with us?
Look, I'm thinking, and I'm sitting here, lady, like, there's no audience members near her. There's not an audience member that's next to her. The dolphin's doing little, you know what I mean? The little fucking the back thing.
Why are you
20 feet
always
out.
near dolphins?
I can't help it. They after me. I didn't even know there was a dolphin exhibit at that one. I was there to see the turtles.
You like turtles?
And then Jasmine's like, do they like doing the tricks? I was like, let me put it to you this way, okay, honey, because some people, you know, they have big issues with the captivity. So let me put it to you like this, okay? When I worked as a correctional officer, okay, they would keep coming back. They loved it in there. They loved it, and that was jail. So I'm pretty sure these dolphins are having a good time.
You know,
they would do anything to get back in.
That's always an interesting part of like the prison mindset, like the idea of like, oh, just let them rot away in jail. It's like, no, like some people go there and fucking thrive, bro. Like they're chilling. Like
they love it. They love it. They're institutionalized dolphins.
There's no like the only thing you're worried about, like as far as saying things there, because what are you gonna do? Cancel me type thing. So there's other stuff like that. There's more freedom of like talking about stuff.
Don't call anyone a bitch.
There's freedom of talking about like all kinds of fucked up subjects until you cross a line, obviously, and then it's like it's kind of like more natural is like what some people would argue is like the natural point is you say something that's to a certain point, I'm gonna punch you in the fucking face, right? Like that it's a simple contract, right? Like there's no like scheming behind the scenes necessarily. Granted, they might stab your ass, but that's another.
Well, you got to be doing some shit. You've got to know, like that's the thing people don't understand. It's like people have a very like unrealistic view of what goes on. They're like, oh, they're plotting on this person for no reason. They're gonna stand on this guy and extort him. And no, like unless you're like just an ass or you like purposely are making people, you know, dislike you. You know, they love it. The dolphins like it in captivity. The inmates like it in captivity. They're institutionalized.
There's another aspect to it. A guy named Matthew Cox was like this con man who kind of got popular because of some like Concrete podcast. Concrete podcast is really weird because this is like a really smaller podcast that got a ton of attention because his story was so entertaining. He like blatantly talks about how he used to be a con man and he effectively defrauded a ton of banks for roughly, 17 million is what the Fed says or whatever. But the point is he like went and defrauded all these banks. He forged all these documents to get loans and would take out 3, 4, 5, 6 loans on the same house from all different banks all at the same time so that they couldn't like cross-reference the fact that you did that. And, it'd be like 100,000 here, 100,000 here. The point is one of the things that he said when he did like I think he did like 10 years, 12 years, something like that. He met someone in there that told him something very specific that stuck to him. The thing that he said was, you're going to meet the most interesting and funniest people you've ever met in this place. Some of your best friends you will meet here in prison. And that's like an interesting thing because he said around 4 years later, he was sitting there like laughing so hard he damn near pissed his pants. Just in a circle with dudes that are all there like criminals, like they did some crazy shit. They're away for a long time and you're talking to them and having a great time. Like it's just in some ways like you're in a little tribe of like people that all have like different varying levels of like problems and schizophrenia and all sorts of stuff. Like, it's very troubled people, but like at the end of the day, there's going to be interesting people amongst the bunch, and they're going to group and they're going to talk and they're going to have a good time. And the idea of saying, I hope he rots in prison is just the most asinine thing you could say. Like the only way that really ever happens is someone who effectively
certain specific crimes.
Yeah, like if if your wife who's a little under 200, right? Like then that's where they have you pretty much just locked up. And well, even then you probably hang out with the other pedos. I don't know, because the chomos, right? That's what they call them in prison.
Child abusers,
Mhm.
the moms who beat their kids. Murderer, you're fine, dude. You're fine if you murder your wife, if she like cheated on you or something. That's like they're not gonna be like super hard up on that. You know what I mean? I guess it depends on how you killed someone. If you like eat people, if you're like if you're a cannibal, you're gonna take issue with that. Yes. Um,
Well, my main point is like,
if you're
when you do
Yeah.
certain things, they'll like put you in
no
like
eating people.
they'll put you in protective custody. So you're kind of away from like the idea that like, oh, that person did this bad thing, he killed his wife and his
They won't
children
just
or
throw 'em
something
in
like
gym
that.
pub.
But yeah, generally
Mhm.
speaking, like it's pretty rare for those guys to get stabbed. The only time they actually get like stabbed and murdered is like in between stuff, like on a court thing.
Transferring.
Yeah, when there's transfers, that's when like that shit happens because those people are actually like close enough to the general population that like doesn't like that shit, and then you will get those scenarios where like it's gang initiation into the prison system, you name it. But basically the point I'm making is like, with exception to a few things, the rotting in prison thing is a nonsense term. I've come to the point where
Well, it's
go ahead.
oh god. No, I was just gonna say that one thing that's really interesting is the lack of. This is probably going to be controversial opinion here. Okay, just letting you know it now. Men are so much more respectful and gentle towards other men than women are towards men when it comes to power. So if I see you on your worst day and you're crying, right? I'm going to like keep my mouth shut. I'm not going to go around telling everybody, okay? And I'm not going to judge you for it. You haven't changed as a man in my eyes. But in general, as a man, when you show weakness, unless I'm like out to get you, right? Unless I genuinely have something against you, okay? And even then, if your like mom dies and you're in jail and I fucking hate you, I'm not going to hold that against you. Your mom died. I may want to kill you, but I'm not going to hold it against you. However, out on the outside, you stub your toe and you go, ooh, ah, and then every woman in like a mile radius is like, ugh, that just gave me the ick. You know what I mean? Like they're harsh. Their tolerance for what you're allowed to do is extremely fucking low before you stop being masculine in their eyes. And so when you're in an all male environment, there's not that level of judgment. So, and I'm not saying that's for all women, but in general, right? Um, there is a way that you have to conduct yourself socially. Um, like in school, for example, like if you've ever cried in class before, you weren't upset. Like, let's say something happened, you cried in class. You were not upset that all your friends saw you cry in class, right? You were upset that all the girls in class saw you cry. Like, that was the part that fucked you up because now they're going to be the ones that are like giggling, whispering, telling people about it. The guys are all like, dude's having a rough fucking time. I'm keeping my fucking mouth shut. I'm not going to fucking say anything. Like this guy, he's upset enough to fucking visit, especially if you're angry and you're doing it. They're all like, you know what? Fuck it, keep my mouth shut. So
So
that's like the environment's very
sorry,
respectful and
where are you
in that
talking
way.
about this in a prison sense? Just kind of like trying to like stay
It's
on
only
topic.
men. It's all men, right? It's all men around.
So you never dealt with like men,
Yeah.
women in those scenarios.
Yeah, and once you get to prison, right? There's no women around you. You're all men, except a couple of female guards who tend to, in general, act very masculine. Right? They take on and assume a very masculine role. So, in regards to like the way that you're able to communicate, right, as opposed to regular life, you do get this sort of openness that you're allowed to be, and that's how. And so you're allowed to really be yourself in a lot of regard. Which for some of them, they shouldn't be themselves. They should go.
Okay, so I get
be dead.
I get where you're going with that, like long form. Like
Yeah.
you can be a goof to some degree as long as you're not like effectively like being so, well, like people just hate you because you're just acting in certain ways they don't like, whatever, right? But yeah, I get the roundabout part of that. Is like you can be more open within that situation. They probably, even to some degrees, despite not being able to really trust each other, that is another aspect of it. Like you know, like people betray each other all the time in prison, but you,
But when a female guard that's feminine acting walks into a block, whole dynamic changes, right? The whole dynamic, changes, and no one's relaxed like they used to be. And that's partly on them, but that's partly also because if she's ugly, whatever, who cares? But if she's nice looking, then all of a sudden they don't want to make an ass. So they may have been playing grab ass or like messing around with each other or pushing each other around, but then like they're going to do less of that. So they're going to be kind of enjoying themselves less, to be honest, because now they feel, because they've kind of been conditioned, at least on the outside, I have to put on this persona in front of women. So that's why I think men in prison tend to be, with each other at least, able to bond pretty quickly because
I
there's
did
less of the persona.
I did meet, like, so it's like adding to like the conversation of like prison life as far as that goes, but um I did meet a woman who, I don't know, she's like 35 or something. She's a correctional officer, you know, just like you were. And basically she was like lesbian or whatever, but like the point of that she mentioned, like why that was important, because like basically like prison people, like, you know, it's like they're locked in a cage and they're lusting after everything. So like, you know, there's like issues with like prison guards not only having like sex with the inmates when they're like opposite gender, it's that they'll fall in love, and there's cases of them like literally like helping them escape or sneaking stuff in with them. So, you know, like the prison officer's like just a normal person, so like they'll fall in love with something that you just enough time together, right? Taboo adding into that, you name it. But basically they mentioned like part of the reason that they got in where they were is because they're just like, oh yeah, you won't have to worry about that with me because I'm a lesbian. But one of the things that she did mention that was kind of funny is that all of like the men within that prison that she was like a correctional officer for were very good at saying all the right things as far as like flirting and shit. They're just like the most like criminal pussy chasing minded people, right? Like, so they're great at the fucking, hey baby, how you doing? You know, like, so it's kind of funny.
They're fantastic because they only have a limit. When they get out, like if they only have, at least part of it's the fact that the criminal mindset, right? But the other part of it, I have to assume, is like when they've been in and out of jail for a while, because normally they'll be in and out of jail, and then they'll get a big sentence to prison. They know, okay, I'm only going to be out of jail for like a week, and I've got to manage to get laid in this week. So I've really got to hone my game down before I go back to jail.
Well, they also honed down humor, which is good for that as well. Like you got a lot of time to just make jokes back and forth, and when you're in a man only environment, like the humor is what gets you through everything. So like, I mean, I kind of went through like a really shitty job experience, like where it was just, you know, I'm not going to say like I was a fucking coal miner at the bottom of the pit, right? But it wasn't a fun job. It wasn't good pay. It was bad. Everything sucked about it. And the one thing that got us and the other guys through it was like just making jokes all the time. So you're just like, you come in, you're sharp. You're always making the next dog shit joke you can think of, and everyone's entertained. So I can definitely tell what that camaraderie is like within like prison. Like, you, to some extent, I don't trust this son of a bitch in the cell next to me, but he is in this place with me, so I may as well make some jokes while we're here. You know, like generally speaking, like,
yeah, eventually you're going to talk to him even if you don't like him.
The ultimate point is that like prison is not somewhere you necessarily rot. So like the punishment isn't as bad as people like to think it is. It kind of makes me like, I was watching the concept.
I miss it.
Okay,
I miss it sometimes.
I believe you. I kind of miss that job I had, believe it or not. Like I probably could have done that for another 10 years without thinking about it. Just like that same.
If I'd have done it for another 5, I could have never done anything else. There was just so much enjoyment, because as a guard, like, you know, you're in it for that amount of time. 12 hours a day.
Yeah, the routine is just comfortable, basically. So I watched like a little mini documentary on the Norwegian prison, and they're just like kind of on some island, and they got each one of them's got a house. They're just chilling in it. It's such a different way of like imprisoning people. Granted, it probably only works for that type of person, because like Norwegians are just kind of like,
it's a very different society.
even though he's a murderer, they're also just kind of like kind people who they like to mind their business. That's another thing I like. Norwegians don't really like bombastic people, like coming out and saying hi and waving and like looking at their, like if you make eye contact with people, yeah, it's like they're kind of introvert like type people. They don't really want to interact with you unless they know you, because I live in the South. Even in the city in the South, if you're driving, like I was driving recently to go finish up on my teeth. By the way, apparently I'm grinding them down. So the dentist said I'm very stressed. Didn't expect a therapy session from the dentist, but they said, yeah, you're going to grind your teeth down to nubs if you don't get a mouth guard at least while you sleep. So that's interesting. But the point is, even in a city, which I live in, when you wave, especially in like a little like off street or something, people wave back at you. Mm-hmm. It's just like a cultural thing in the South, especially in Texas. That
Same in Indiana.
I grew up in California. That's
I don't even know who they are. They're like, hi, yeah, and I was like, who the fuck are these people? Okay, hi.
I grew up in California. This is not a thing. Like in general down there, people do not wave at each other. They don't look at each other. They don't want to They don't look at you. They don't care about you. But in the South, this is like a thing. And the point is there's like cultural differences within regions that like proliferate that make that possible. So I don't know if like a Norwegian style prison is even possible here in the United States, but
no,
there's got to be something else, because the idea of like it's just prison college or criminal college is what they call it, right? So you
learn so much. I learned so much.
You got some secrets. You got any jankum
I just
recipes?
learned a lot. I just like, oh, that's how they do that. That's not real.
That's not real? Come on.
A myth. It's a myth.
You never tried it?
It's an old 4chan myth, I think.
Yeah, that was always a funny one to see. But
I know so many people had to have done it and tried it. One other thing I was going to say in regards to the guards having relationships with the inmates is that from my experiences, and again, this is like the second time I'm saying something that's going to be controversial. But from my personal experiences, when I was there, a lot of the men were just like, two things would happen. And it would mostly be the first thing. Either they would go, well, I'm just going to gain a ton of weight. Well, it would usually be the second one. They'd say, I'm going to gain a bunch of weight now. Or they'd be like, okay, time for me to just get absolutely shredded. I'm just going to get in the best shape of my life. So, like, you're having all these, like, just ripped, shredded guys walk around.
They're
at their physical best. You just got pure athletes now. They're just at their physical best. And they're walking around and they're just shredded. So like the physical best of men are in there, and they've got all these social skills.
Yeah, okay, and you're in a hyper-competitive male environment. Okay, yeah, right. This all makes sense. Why the guard?
So then the women are like, "Damn, wow."
Yeah, that's a very good point. I'm not going to say who it was, but I used to know a guy who apparently murdered some people, but he's dead now, so that's the whole thing. You can't get me. I don't even know who. Just a rumor, right?
I know,
but the point is like that guy used to tell me that they used to fill up bags of water, like trash bags, and then do fucking curls with them, like one at a time. Curls are like presses, you name it, but like they do all kinds of like weird stuff with creating weight in some way, because you can't use real weights because they kill each other with the weights, but that's a whole other thing. There was also theories that like they're getting way too jacked, so it would like make them harder to fight for the guards because your prisoner's like fucking, he's He's basically got creatine body. He's ready to beat the shit out of you.
I'd work out with him sometimes. That'd be fun. I'd go in there and I'd see they've made some weights, and I'd be like, I'm gonna confiscate these in about 2 months. 2 months is probably what I can let you have these for. You have to make some new ones. I mean, like a 2-month span before someone else is gonna notice, because you're gonna put them out on the. But let me. Well, the cameras doesn't work in this block, so let me hit these real quick, and and they're like, ah, they're all cheering. You know what I mean?
It's crazy.
They're just wrestling around with them. You know what I mean? Just like I said, I miss it. Like, it's just fun.
I guess that says something about like the human spirit of like, no matter how fucking horrible it really is, like you're gonna find fun there, right? Like,
oh yeah.
You think the gulags like had some fun moments? There's probably some fun moments. Come on.
I don't.
You know,
I feel like this is a dangerous. I'm no longer communicating anything on this.
You don't want to say
that? I'm done. In a little montage that I.
Russians got that dry humor, you know.
And then they like shoot one in the back of the head in the little 80s montage.
Did you see how his fucking eye flew? Ivan, did you see that? That was funny.
Hey!
It bounced 3 times and rolled down the stairs.
Just put the DuckTales theme to like anything, and then it's not as bad, I feel like.
I don't know. Have you ever seen the one where it's like the live action
DuckTales? Woo!
And it's like it's the pedophile duck fucking have you seen that one? It's a fucking old clip.
The pedophile.
So it's like basically like this the young one or whatever, one of the girl ones is like showing her fucking shit. It's just like a quick fucking YouTube video. It's like it's not like a full on like porn or anything. But the point is like the ducks like fucking flashing and the camera like sending nudes or whatever over the internet. It's like DuckTales, ooh, like it's going over and then eventually the fucking the guy comes over, like, pretending to be your internet boyfriend, kidnaps like the whatever the girl duck is with the pink fucking dress on, and takes her into a van and like kidnaps her. And it's just like it's all to the DuckTales. It's fucking dark. And then
without the DuckTales theme, this is fucked up. I feel like it would have been funny if it was like DuckTales. Woo! So like I would have laughed. Now it's disturbing.
So yeah, this is like the whole like video, and then it's revealed that the what's his name? What's the Scrooge McDuck? Is that literally his name? I don't remember.
I don't know. Let me DuckTales. I don't even know what the show looks like. Yeah, it's Scrooge McDuck.
Anyways, it's revealed that he's the one who set up the kidnapping at the end of the video. She feels all safe with him, but he's the one who like set her up. And then they don't show anything else. It's just like a fucked up video like that's like really popular at one point. But yeah, so DuckTales over anything's funny.
There's a live action DuckTales video.
Yeah,
this is horrifying.
What, are you watching it?
Yeah. Oh, whoa! This lady's duck titties are out. What is this?
I told you, dude. That's the thing.
No! The mammalians are out. Woo! It's so good. Anyways, if you put that over the gulag, yeah, I bet they had a hell of a time. Without DuckTales, it was disgusting. It was a tragedy. It was sickening. It was humanity at worst. With DuckTales, not so bad. Not so bad.
I'm glad that we came to a conclusion on that. But
just little DuckTales.
To belabor the point about like prisons and stuff, I've been trying to think about what do you do instead, right? Like, what is the solution to? Because what we have now is like fucking horrible. Like, I mean, it's horrible to you and me as far as, well, maybe not to you. You got more experience with it. You're a little desensitized, but like, I would not want to be in that situation. But what's the solution on a society scale. You've got like the tech people that are like thinking about like making designer drugs that make it feel like you've been in prison for 2,000 years and then you wake up. Have you heard about that?
No, that sounds terrible.
Basically, it's possible that like you over like a day of being drugged feel like you're in prison for like 100 years. Slows your sense of time to a crawl. Yeah, so like that's horrifying, isn't it?
So like, I feel like I ripped. I think back when I smoked weed when I was in college, I didn't smoke like a ton, but I had this like 38-year-old woman who was like this big hippie, and she's like, and she's like, oh, I'll be like your college mom. I'll cook you guys meals or whatever, and we're like, okay, cool. And then she like made her own vape juice, and we all vaped like a ton. I was like 19, so we went over to her place, and then it was her two roommates were guys. I think they were gay and in a relationship. They were really funny, but they had this massive dab rig, and I didn't know what that was. I had no idea, and so I rip this one. I'm like, well, I could smoke like a gram of weed. I'll rip a 1 gram dab, which I didn't realize is like 80% THC, and so I'm just I swear to God, I thought that I was I thought like 30 or 40 hours had passed, you know? And then I like looked at my watch and it had been like 5 minutes, and she puts on this anime. It's some sort of high school anime where like Freddie Mercury's there. And he's riding on a horse. I swear to God, someone's gonna watch this and know what I'm talking about. I can never remember the name. But yeah, I saw
idea.
that.
I'm stumped.
I saw that and I was like, I'm never gonna smoke this again. This is fucking terrible. So I understand that living for 1,000 years.
You know, like we're losing people to like high like dabs, like high concentrate THCs, like it causes like schizophrenic breaks in certain people. There are people lost forever on the streets now to stuff like that.
For sure, it's like when the
dab pen's like really bad.
Well, especially if you're smoking, if you're also ingesting nicotine or taking any type of like Vyvanse or Adderall or anything like that. So any sort of person with ADHD, so you can't like give yourself constant stimulants and also put yourself at a slightly hallucinogenic level 24/7. Your brain just takes a shit. It just can't fucking handle it.
Well, there's the whole argument that's existed forever now with weed at this point. Like most of my life, it's like, oh, it's just a plant growing in the ground. God made it, right? Like that's the whole like concept of it. But it's so genetically engineered at this point that you're not smoking whatever God gave you. It is like the
Coke's
point.
A plant.
It's
heroin's a plant.
Yes, so
that's a shit argument.
But basically, you can extrapolate that out to everything. Yeah, but that's like, oh, it grows in the ground. It's got to be good for you. God put it there. It's just like, that's wrong. Like, no, some guy named Jeffrey's been genetically engineering that for fucking decades of his life, creating novel strands.
You have BPD and depression. It's not good for you. Maybe the guy without all the mental illness can smoke the weed, right? Not you. You have issues. You need to see a therapist and you need to stop smoking pot. Like, you actually have issues. Stop, please. I'm begging you.
Yeah. I don't know if he wants to come on, by the way, but I'm going to invite him. But anyways, yeah, I've always found that. Oh, hello.
Hello.
Okay, how would you like to be referred to here, my friend?
Oh, God. No, just say Eric.
Okay, this is my good friend Eric. I've known him for roughly 3 years now. He and I have been through a bunch of shit.
Should I be jealous?
He is one of the most talented young men that I know as far as just ability and intelligence. So that's I did want to bring you on.
Nice to meet you.
Eventually,
Hello.
Eric, but mainly I wanted to talk to you a little bit about if we can transition here. I don't think we're gonna go more on like the prison stuff that we were talking about. I had some conclusions to that, but we get weird here, Eric. We just kind of go off at this point.
Yep.
It is what it is. But main things I kind of wanted to talk to you about just eventually on this would be your field in general, as far as like what your major is and what you're doing internship wise. So
Yeah.
if you feel like talking about that, whatever you can talk about, it'd be really interesting for people to hear. Because
No,
I
I'd
know
love to. Yeah.
you know a lot about like the machine learning aspect of all this. So
And then after the introduction, I'm going to get a glass of water because the AC's not working today. So I'm actually sweating like a
okay.
something somewhere.
Yeah. No,
pig?
right. So I have been interning at this lab in Sweden for quite a few years now. We do specialize in machine learning in systems biology, is what we call it. We take a lot of data from how different types of cells work, and we see how drugs affect them. And based on that, we produce new drugs. So we could apply this to chronic diseases, where, for example, something like muscle sarcopenia, which is this terrible muscle condition that it develops in either infants or very old people that breaks down muscle tissue, eventually killing them because the heart is a muscle. So we look at how different parts of the cell react to this, and then we try to find drugs that sort of counteract that. But here's the problem with drugs in general. Actually curing the disease isn't like the hard part. It's whatever comes next. So if I fix one problem, I might be causing 10 others. So we look at stuff like that to see how we can balance those out, basically.
So as far as I understand, the reason that it causes other aspects to it, now I don't know this on the scientific level as far as all the terms that go to it, but effectively when you create a drug, you're creating something that interacts with a large number of like cells within a certain organ, right? So you got something that helps with your kidneys. The problem is there's cells within other parts of your body, like your heart and your lungs, for example, that may take to that new drug that's coming in. Like it will go and bond there and then cause side effects, right?
Mhm,
Is
exactly.
that so? That's a big part of what it is, where you can technically just solve most things like he's saying, but the issue is weaving the very complicated web of now you're not destroying the kidneys when you're trying to fix a lung problem, which is very often what happens with most drug compounds that are like figured out. Like the vast
A
majority
lot
of
of
drug
treatments
vast majority of drug compounds will kill
result
you.
in death.
Yeah.
Yeah, result in death. That's yeah.
So it's
lot
about
of-
finding the stuff with the least amount of side effects for the
sure.
best. Yeah. So
hmm
So,
It's interesting.
but it's also from a cellular perspective as well. Like, sure, a drug can affect multiple organs, but it could even be like the tiniest just energy difference in one part of the cell that could like just lead to catastrophic effects. So, even if we find a drug that like weaves through all these issues, we want to find like an optimal way to actually nudge the cell to do these changes and not actually force it, because that's better. It's like making a suggestion, hey, you should do this, because then it sort of fixes everything else. It's like our bodies are amazing at telling ourselves to balance out everything else when it wants to achieve a certain thing. So it's the difference between nudging and forcing the cell, because then we don't have to worry about everything else. We don't understand like 90% of what's going on, basically. We just want to nudge it and suggest, hey, try to not have this person have this disease.
So
makes
something that you would be able to speak to as well is the AlphaFold technology and what's coming beyond that. The main thing to talk about with that, Johnny, is that with AlphaFold and technology like this, it is very expensive to create a drug. Extremely expensive. So we have this entire swath of people within the afflicted of humanity, right, that have various rare or semi-rare diseases where technically we could solve that disease. So, you know, you've got some disease that affects 1 million people on Earth, one that affects 100,000 people on Earth, one that affects 10 million, whatever the threshold is. Unless there is enough people with that disease, it is not a financially profitable venture for most drug companies to go down and then take the extreme amounts of money that it takes to actually develop the drug that will help cure or mend some of that issue with that person. So you have a ton of people across a swath of different diseases that are forever afflicted because of whatever condition they have, and it will never be cured.
Is it orphan drugs?
Yes, that's the term, orphan drugs. So it'll never be cured in the current standing. So like the point about AlphaFold and why it's such a big deal in machine learning in general is that we are now able to genuinely change people's lives that would have never been profitable before because it would have been too expensive to develop the drug itself. It can come in cheaper, cheaper investment, you name it, and it's only going to get better. So I guess I would let you speak a little to that, Eric.
Right. So there's definitely a lot of costs involved in all those steps. But the big sort of money printer when it comes to drugs is patents. So there are these laws and international agreements to stop these like huge companies from having a monopoly of all these different drugs. They have this rule that you have to change like the ingredients and what's inside just barely every 4 years. And we have this in Sweden. We have this drug called Alvedon, which is just like this headache reliever. I think 4 years ago they just changed the sugar concentration by just a little, and that's it. So that's their way of helping smaller labs create drugs that work better. But it just doesn't do anything, obviously, because it doesn't really make any other room for creating unique drugs, even if it's unique and working. It's a matter of like getting it out there, getting it tested. But even that could take years, just like publishing a paper and then having it be approved for human trials. That's a long process. And especially if it's an institute that doesn't like you or wants to favor another lab group. So there's a whole lot of that going on behind the scenes. It's incredibly slow, exactly. But even if it was faster, it's not really in the interest of bigger companies to have a smaller one make a better drug than you, right? So you want to be able to limit the newer drugs to come into the market. So it's a huge market just for making those drugs, even if it's as simple as a headache reliever.
So would you say it's like a bit of like just on top of the own expenses and then legalese around all of this? There's also a bit of would you say like politics are affecting how much we can do progress-wise speaking of like drugs specifically? Like is that like a big
it's just
barrier?
Capitalism in general, I'd say.
Okay.
Which I'm not saying isn't a good thing. I mean, it's really good in drugs.
It has flaws.
It has big flaws for sure, but it's still the incentive to help people. Money, it's something,
Yeah,
Right.
the old saying at this point is like, you may not like capitalism, but it's the best system we have right now. It ends up over time. It does most things pretty decently as far as on a long scale. In the temporary, there's tons of uncomfortable uncomfortable stuff that comes with capitalism.
I was just seeing someone complaining about it in the context of actually there's an Instagram comment section with Jadron always tells me I should not go on anymore because I argue with people. Anyways, they were talking about how the Pink Floyd song, they had someone dreaming or thinking about a Pink Floyd song. They scanned the brain, the whatever information that the brain was outputting, and then they were able to translate it back into music. And someone's like, I wish that I could be happy about this, but because of capitalism, I'm unable to be happy about this. This just scares me because bad people are going to use it because capitalism. And I was like, well, yes and no. Yes, system we have is capitalism, right? And people are going to use it. But like people would have used this negatively in any system. Okay, that's just the way systems work. That's just the way any structure works. But like specifically, that's kind of how I feel. Is that anytime there's an exchange of power or an exchange of goods, there's going to be abuses in it. And the medical industry suffers because it's such a need, it's a necessity. That's why it's so easy to be corruptible, is because there are people that need this to live. So there's a big desire there. So I think
the theory with medical is that it's not truly capitalistic because it's very often in the edge cases, but they're pretty common, is like life or death. So I've got a gun at my head and I got to do what you say, which is pay this $20,000 bill, right? Like that within America, especially, that legitimately is a limitation to many things revolving around capitalism.
Not much of a free market.
Yeah, it doesn't help you. That's what I was trying to say. Is it's not a free market situation because there literally is a gun above your head sometimes because you're going to die, and this is a life-saving thing, and you may or may not have insurance. You name it. People get into all sorts of screwed up debt, but there's a whole like genre of the internet that'll talk to you about how to get out of that, but that's another story for another day. But anyways, I think short term sucks, long term good. So the fact that we're getting these technologies within machine learning for drug advancement is very good, because like you
Star
said
Trek,
earlier,
hopefully future.
Yeah, with the orphan drugs. I mean, so I kind of wanted to ask you about more fantastical things. Like, so you would know a lot about the longevity stuff because you pay attention to David Sinclair, Eric.
Yeah.
So, okay, so there's we're advancing at this rate sense, right? So technically, we probably could be more advanced when it comes to. My dog's freaking out. Anyways, technically, we could be more advanced when it comes to drug discovery for things like longevity. So, age reversal in general, but part of the issue is probably just a little bit of cronyism, as well as a little bit of things are just slow because of patent stuff and research and regulation, which are all good in theory, depending. So, but the main point I'm making is like, how far do you think we are out from, at least in theory, some sort of advancement in the, like, genuinely we get to the point where we can slow aging to a crawl or like reverse it within the drug stuff?
So a lot of what he does has existed before in terms of just the genes he's manipulating. The issues that would arise before, which was was it 2008, I think, was that when you manipulated those genes to, in quite literally, reverse age, we would get tumors. Those tissues would basically grow too fast, and it was completely uncontrollable. And these tumors were quite special in that if you would open them up, you could see teeth, hair, like it's just uncontrollable stem cell growth, which is a good sign, sort of, because it says that, well, there is tissue growing in the other way. So that's good, but it's uncontrollable. Now, what he has proposed and his lab group has come to, apparently, is that he has found a way to bypass that so that it's safe reverse aging. There are no tumors occurring. Now, no one knows how he does this, but according to those papers, especially with the mouse, where he basically reverse engineered the eye to grow back from an old state to a fully young one, which is insane.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the thing he said to his kids, cured blindness today.
It is targeted, exactly. And that's the approach it seems like we're going to have for all genetic engineering projects, basically, where we isolate a specific organ and then only manipulate those genes for that specific organ. So it would be like you're extracting
everything's on a different track, essentially, right? Everything has its own sort of written rules.
Do you think that's ideal?
By, so it's easier.
We don't have a choice. The only way to deliver...
that's just the way the...
Yeah, so I think we can make all these simulations, all these tissues, all these tests for different tissues, but to actually deliver this gene to every single cell in an organ, that's a nightmare process. So the best case is to literally extract it and go cell by cell and try to get it out there. That's the only way we can do it for a fully adult person. Now, a way to bypass this is by implanting these genes when you're just an embryo, which is what happened in China 2018. Lulu and Nana were the two twins, the first genetically engineered people on this planet. They had this gene turned off for it was an HIV receptor. Basically, they are unable to get HIV basically, and they're fine today. Although the Chinese project leader, he ended up in prison for 4 years. He's out now. He said he'd do it again. So
I'll do it again.
Hey, I mean, those two without the HIV possibility are pretty happy, but even though it's pretty hard to get, you got to be really doing some stuff to get that. That's all I'm saying. Like, I'm not blaming them if you get it, but like at some point you're playing with fire all day. If you get burned, but that's
you've been playing with something.
Why do you think that they started with the HIV specifically? Is that just like a easier thing to like proof of concept your way through?
Yeah, so it's a proof of concept thing for sure. Okay. I mean, as amazing as it is, like immunity to HIV, like, are you kidding me? That's amazing. But it's just one gene.
I know.
It's just a single gene. Just flick it, and
interesting. So you just turn the switch. In theory,
you turn the switch. Yeah. So the alternative.
There's not that many different types of cells in the human body. I mean, as far as aging goes, I mean, there's correct me if I'm wrong, but as far as like skin goes, like that would just be one subset of sort of cellular structure, right? Just the entire skin.
Yes.
So that would be okay. And then brain, heart, lungs, eyes, skeletal, all the different organs and stuff like that. I mean, so you just go one by one. Boom, boom, boom.
Right. But for something like skin, you would deliver or manipulate the specific gene of all those cells all around your body. We don't have that technology yet. So an alternative to the embryo approach, which goes into ethics a bit because you'd ask for consent. You can't do that in embryo stage, obviously, is a virus. So you would have a virus to deliver the genes to every single cell in that area. But the issue with that, and there are all these conspiracy theories. Our immune system tends to kill the virus before it gets to its target. So, we did this for cancer treatments even. It connects to HIV even. There are all these conspiracy theories that HIV was the first attempt to make a virus to kill cancer.
Yeah, I've heard that conspiracy.
Yeah, there's lots of evidence for that. Basically, the idea is that since HIV is a oncolytic virus, is what it's called, it is more likely to target cancer cells. Around the time where research into that started happening, for which types of viruses that target cancer, HIV started breaking out. So you look at the timelines, you look at the area in which it was first discovered, and you see the problem with oncolytic viruses is that, again, it gets killed before it gets to the tumor. So you can give it to the patient, but it just doesn't get to do what it's supposed to do because our immune system kills it. So in theory, you would just need a way to temporarily turn off the immune system.
The immune system.
But just you couldn't turn it back on afterwards.
That makes sense. Okay, so in theory, what we know about what's going on with like the recent virus that we all were hit with in 2020 is more than likely lab grown in some way, right? It's pretty highly likely, given what we know. I mean, but
that alone,
if it's not, the point is that assuming that's true, that is proof of concept. Is that it wouldn't be that weird to think that we did this in the past, especially given to some degree the main advancement for that over time has been kind of in the last 10 years as far as like moving into significant amounts of machine learning advancement. Well, I think it's more like the last 3, right? But it wouldn't be that weird is my point. Is that we with technology back then were able to do this at some point. So the theory checks out as far as what we've been able to do recently and how advanced we definitely were still then. So basically checks out that we might have whoopsed on that one.
We definitely have the tech for that. Again, like just viruses are basic proteins, and the most quote unquote primitive ones at that. It's just insert and duplicate. That's it.
But before I forget, a question. about the recent anti-cancer drug. It's like anti-70 cancers. And it
Shit, okay.
yeah, so I'm surprised you hadn't heard about this, but it's going into like human trials. It's been a drug that's been developing for 20 years. And the theory is that it's against all sorts of stuff: prostate cancer, breast cancer, bunch of shit. It's like 70 total, maybe more. I don't know. But the point is it targets all these cancers. It does what chemo does without killing the rest of your cells, apparently. I don't know enough to say with any authority, but so the concept is, say we were able to create this drug, right? Would we be able to use traditional methods, so non-pie-in-the-sky advancements from Dr. David Sinclair, of longevity that we know we can do? So the example is the tumors, right? Would, again, you don't know a whole lot about this, at least I don't think you do. Would having some sort of cure-all for cancer to some degree that, can help fight cancer and fight tumors in tandem, would it be able to effectively, like, we can brute force it? You take both pills, right? One's beating the shit out of the tumors that are coming up, and then the other one's just regenerating your body. Okay. Like, is that possible?
Okay. that's okay. So that's an interesting idea and like a way to bring
I just came up with it together.
Together. You did? That sounds really cool, actually.
Because I'd never heard about I'd never heard about what you mentioned, where that we've figured this out, but the problem is it just creates tumors, right? So if we have, you ever played Portal 2, where it's the it's like we're rebuilding your entire body, and then like it's like the good news is, we took out all your tumors. You say you don't have tumors? Well, if you sat in the lobby, you did. And it's just like, it's just like wonderful game. But the point is, in theory, would that be possible?
Yeah. Okay. So just starting off with the drug itself. I haven't seen this specific drug you're talking about, but there are a bunch of these attempts in the past. Like this one might be, it probably is a much better attempt in comparison to what we had before. But in just from past experience, what I've seen, there are two types of cancer drugs. There's one that would prevent cancer, and there's one that would quite literally kill the cancer cells. But with the first approach of preventing cancer, we don't quite understand how this works. Elephants, which are much bigger than us, there's more cell division going on there. They don't have tumors for some reason.
Really?
They pretty much never do. Yeah, sharks, a lot of sharks, they don't either, and we don't understand why. We have tried the idea of like, okay, if the whole premise of cancer is that it occurs when something goes wrong in the cell split, let's just lower the chance of that happening by cutting a big part of our genome. Now, from what we can tell, only like a very small percentage of our actual genome is used. So just cut the rest of it off. But the thing is, maybe it's used for something else that we don't understand yet. So drugs in that sense would be used to silence the unnecessary part. That's the idea of that. But the other part is, again, quite literally killing the cancer cell. Now, the issue of that is that if you have a brain tumor and a part of your brain is now cancerous, if you kill that part, then now you have a hole in your brain. So you would die bleeding out. But with pairing it with something like the David Sinclair's drug, assuming it doesn't create more tumors, it doesn't contribute to already cancerous growing, which is incredibly fast, then, if it just speeds up the regeneration, I could assume one would kill the cancer cells and one would grow back the healthy tissue. That would check out just from thinking about it, like logic wise. Okay.
So on a time scale, right? How far out do you think we generally are from solving that issue? Because we have we have a bunch of people that are very enthusiastic within this group that think like we're going to have AGI by 2028 and some even sooner, 2025, right? And then obviously, like once you get AGI, the theory is that it only takes a couple of months before you have ASI. Who knows, right? I think that's probably not likely because of manufacturing, the need to actually create the chips to build that. So once the AGI actually figures out how to do it, how to make ASI in theory, it then has to set up all the manufacturing in order to get the higher end chipsets that it designed to give itself the compute to do what we need to do, right? So there's a theory of like, you can't just jump this tech stack. It might know what the jumps are, but it will have to progress with each new chip that it gets to build the next advancement, right? So there's theories that like you have like singularity event is 2028. I think that's really, it's not impossible as far as like getting AGI, but having a genuine singularity event where everything's just like a computer now, or whatever people think the singularity is, effectively like extreme advancement. There's a lot of manufacturing that has to take place in all of this, and this includes drug stuff. So the theory would be, if we are able to do this, how long do you think it would take, assuming we don't get stuck for like a decade or something? Does that make sense? Like, assuming there's not a roadblock that we do not foresee. What do you think the general timeline is for genuine longevity? In that sense.
So something like AGI, like that is like we've never even thought about the possibilities that would come with that, because something that sets AGI apart from just general AI is of course that it knows the next thing to do without us having to tell it what to do.
Well,
like right
it's
now,
an
the
agent
field
capable of its own research as well, or thinking.
Correct.
Yep.
So it collects and it executes. It does everything. Right now, the field of systems biology, which hasn't been around for more than 4 years, machine learning, with that being the biggest component, that would revolutionize it completely. And it's funny to think that it hasn't been around for like even a decade, and it's still already going to be changed completely. With something like drug screening like this, there are all these like different categories, right? So one person would be handling actually testing it, one would run the simulations, one would exactly tell the system which drugs to use, which genes to target. And AGI could do all of that by making simulations, by testing it with machines, by running through billions of data sets. And I say billions because it's huge.
Probably trillions of made up ones as well.
Yeah. So it would be able
the
to.
groundwork's laid as well, especially with the whole, we understand the problem. So I think that also speeds things up as well, because with our already done research and understanding the problem, not understanding the solution, then it can focus on, it doesn't have to understand the complexities of the problem necessarily. So we've already figured that out. And so at that point, that speeds it up. So not to derail, but the moment that I saw they were doing with the mice and they were able to de-age the optical, right? And the cells and that, I was like, oh, well, we're really close then. Right, so we're super close. It's
on a
just
human
dependent
scale, it's so close that it's scary.
Yeah.
Real quick to interrupt as well, just to add more to the argument here, DeepMind's goal is to right now it can simulate the protein folding. Eventually, their goal is to work towards simulating the entire cell, and then past that point, you get enough compute that effectively molecule by molecule you simulate an entire organ, and then eventually obviously an entire organ ecosystem, an entire human, you simulate them, and you can just billions per second. This is crazy amounts of compute or advancement that we're talking about here. You can unit test a billion drugs, random compounds, to just see what it does. And eventually, depending on your own, so the argument is that eventually I go up to the computer and it pricks my finger, takes the thing, does the simulations on the back end, a pill pops out that's perfect for me, it heals me on everything. And that's because it can go and do all the unit tests on a perfect version of me in a simulation. So that's what AGI in essence, well, ASI for sure, the technology is eventually coming for that. So it's just a matter of time more than anything. So the main thing I kind of wanted to drag out of you is like, if from your own like within the field situation, where do you think we're at, like on a time scale of we have hit longevity, assuming no more roadblocks that are extreme?
Yeah. So the thing is, with longevity, it's sort of it, it's a completely new idea from just our practices when it comes to drugs from before. We we are looking at individual therapies for individual people, individual drugs, not a general drug. For example, in this case,
Mm,
there is no single gene that works for everyone
okay.
to target and manipulate. So with something like AGI, it will be able to, like you said, simulate a person, simulate the whole genome, see what changing one thing would do, see what changing another thing would do, and applying it to that person. Something like AGI would introduce quite literally individual treatments in a way we haven't seen before. It's your individual medical professional, your individual like genetic therapist. It would take care of all that, and it would enable us to do anything. Maybe one thing is possible for one person, maybe another thing isn't because we're lacking data.
So
That
you
sort
would
of thing.
say longevity is pretty codependent on AGI, at least on large scale.
For
So
sure.
like if hypothetically, let's say my genetic makeup and everything, um, we were just focused on me. All the testing was done based off my DNA. Then longevity wouldn't necessarily need to be based off of AGI because you'd be doing it just for my sequences, right? But
Yeah.
if we're looking wholesale, for everybody, that's going to require very individualistic treatments, which is not going to be feasible. You can't have an entire laboratory for every, all the billions of people.
No, exactly. So that's sort
Okay.
of what we're approaching there. Individual healthcare, basically. There is no other way to reach longevity in that scale, to have full
Okay.
lives, longer lives. That's not possible because you have to look at everything. Like the gut microbiome is a huge, like new field almost because we're measuring all this data for different bacteria, see what they're doing. That's something that
Which
an AI
doesn't
is
get
not taking
doesn't
into
get
account.
the credit it deserves as being such a complex part of the human.
Oh,
Like
definitely.
it affects mood, it affects energy
Right.
levels, it affects all sort of bioelectrical, biochemical stuff. It's
Right.
really interesting.
But you can't
So
have a
yeah,
degree in that and another thing and have experience in one field and another. You need an AGI to think of all that stuff. Your everything from your gut microbiome to your transcriptomic factors to your genetic makeup, like
I can
that's
fix
something.
my acid reflux, is what you're telling me, and my
Oh,
my
100%.
stomach issues. Okay, nothing else has. I'm not taking any next. It makes me nauseous. So I'm AGI really is. So
It's praying
And
for
this
but then
AGI
field
so
would
he
once
can
be
eat spaghetti.
Yeah, yeah. So once that happens, then that's going to happen. You think at a pretty rapid pace. So it's not really how long till longevity; it's how long till AGI, and the way that we're talking about it.
right. I mean, there's already attempts at making something similar without AI help, and it's called multi-omics, is what it's called. We, as something I work with, especially, we look at all these different factors. So again, transcriptomic factors, genetic makeup, your gut microbiome, and we try to make a whole like health overview of you. But we're never going to be able to approach something with like AGI would because they will be able to think of everything. We can just like measure just a few things, a few known bacteria, a few known like genes that we know correlate to this disease, and we hand it to you, make a PDF for you.
Mhm.
But something like AGI will be able to do all that like a million times better than us. So we can do a half-assed version of it, but never in the same way that AGI could.
So basically,
So
what
we can
Johnny's
just
saying is
sample
we're kind of hinged
tons of
on
parts of you.
AGI here, as far as
Oh,
like
for sure.
for sure longevity. What's your time frame, just in theory? Like how, like if I could say if it's under 10 years, is that crazy or is it over 20? What are
Oh
you
no,
thinking is
no.
like general longevity?
So it will. These like multi-omic platforms that take these tests and put them into one whole overview. They've been around for a year. And if we look at trends of new products in the market and the way it's been just accelerating because of how long or how easy it is to transfer information between people at this stage, it's been going much faster. So something like ChatGPT, for example, 100 million people tried it and loved it. That's one form of technology that got adapted super quick. something like a multiomics, which has to do with our health, I'm sure it will be even bigger, to be honest. So just for, and ChatGPT just had this like big boom in like over the course of a few months. If we are very pessimistic with this idea, it could take maybe 2 years until everyone's used to the idea of multiomics. But then the market becomes a who can do it better, cheaper, at a bigger scale. Then it's some like capitalism issue. And that's the pro of capitalism right there. That's where we see the effect of that coming in. Because it's a competition. And competition invites innovation, acceleration. So let's say that takes 5 more years. And at a certain point, it'll be like, this can't possibly go faster. It's like Morse code. It's like Moore's law issue there. Yeah, it's a similar thing. You have to take the next step. So where Moore's law would have quantum computers, we would have AGI.
Okay.
So I would say less than 10 years for sure.
What's that? You massive.
You think that like the concept of longevity is very doable within 10 years?
Oh, for sure.
Pessimistically, let's say within no matter what, within 20 though. That would be, then if it's doable within 10, we the assumption then would be, without everything falling apart at the seams, that it would definitely be feasible in 15 to 20. Absolutely then.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that would be outrageous because if you look at the advancements we're doing now, it would be insane to think that it would take any longer. Like it wouldn't make sense.
Yeah,
but that's not an excuse to anyone listening to not take care of yourself. Okay, that's not an excuse. Be like, well, hell, I have an extra pizza today. That's mostly just for me. That's mostly for me. I needed to say that out loud for myself.
Yeah,
as I drink my sugar-filled sweet tea and hit my vape.
I only drink diet like soda, so is that good? I hear it's just battery acid for your teeth, though. So I don't know. Well, what's the old Trump joke? I've never seen a thin person drinking a Diet Coke. That is true for me.
Yeah. Well, so Eric, right? Correct.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So Eric, since you're in one of these fields that's going to sort of be augmented heavily, and you're a scientist, I think you would describe yourself as a scientist, right?
We're all scientists.
Yeah, well, we're all. Yeah, I think everyone's a scientist, but you get paid to be a scientist. I don't get paid to be a scientist, right? I like to think, you strike me as the kind of person who wouldn't be upset if the field that you've been working on and it culminates because of this technology and not because of a discovery that you made. You seem like someone who is just fascinated with the evolution of the technology and knowledge. And maybe scientists do tend to be a little bit more like that. You don't seem like it's like, oh, well, I've been working on this, then AGI comes along and solves it for me. Womp womp. I'm upset. You seem like you'd be like, yes, the thing that I've been working on has been solved.
Yeah.
Right. And the information that I helped with led to that, even if I'm not the one that discovered it. It seems like you have that attitude. And I feel like most people in the science field, unless they're very egotistical, which that can happen, are going to have a similar. So I guess, and one way or another, I'm kind of asking, what's your opinion on that? Sort of your role leading up to sort of AGI taking over and sort of implementing all that stuff. Would you say you'd be pretty happy with that, just because the ends, the goals met? Is that correct?
Okay, it's very like the field is very split when it comes to that question. Or it's not even split. Like I think the majority would be pissed off because
I was supposed to do it.
Yeah, pretty much. But if you zoom out and you look at it logically, you will never be able to do a full overview of the genetic code and think of every single factor the way AGI could. It's simple as that. So it's just stupid to have any other approach to this, and it's like an ego thing, if anything, because you are prioritizing your own contributions, your own status over someone else's health. It's absurd. But with that being said, I don't think that scientists will be completely dismissed in something like this.
Oh, of course not.
No, it's silly to think. Like if Alan Turing, right? You will never forget his name. Doesn't matter what comes after, and every single major achievement on that chart, they will all be remembered.
Now with like the advent of AGI and stuff, we're we're at a level of like data capture that's insane, where we will be able to reverse go through, and I'm serious, like the NSA files, and you will figure out every person that led up to some event, and they'll be
The
in
father of.
they'll be in the credits. Is my point. Like we will have so much data capture in an AGI sense that we're going to figure out who the heroes are. Is my general point. You're going to get some credit.
Yeah.
They'll get credit. Yeah.
in like a 50-year time frame. Like if you want to look into something, you will figure out who did something, and people that maybe deserve some credibility that maybe died in like the 90s, but like something they did led us to all of these points. Like there's no way that they're not going to be known, no matter what happened as far as the propaganda towards that person. Where
Right.
Because there's a lot of like data that's probably lost, where like certain people took credit for something and got away with it. That happens. So
Yeah.
Well, I feel like if anyone has the right to have sour grapes, it's people like you. It's the younger generation, right? Because you're not going to be, not to be negative, but like someone, let's say, who's higher up the chain, who's in their 60s, who's working on this, all the information that they've collected is going to be used in that, right?
Right.
Someone lower down the chain, the younger scientists, if anyone's going to be like, well, I didn't give the credit, I didn't get the opportunity to, really heavily build on what we're currently now creating, as some of the older scientists did. But it's funny because I feel like the younger scientists, to tell me if I'm wrong, obviously, are more okay with AI and not necessarily having as big of an impact on research, as
Right.
long as the research gets done. So I think that that's interesting. And tell me if that's wrong, but that's kind of, I have some scientists in the family, and that's kind of
Right.
the kind of vibe I get.
Yeah. So, I mean, there are a couple components to this. The first part is, the common misconception that jobs will be lost. No, we'll get
Mm.
more. Mostly in the form of AI product managers. And there are plenty of companies that will have their own individual positions for this, depending on the project itself. So, what I can see myself as in the future is someone that would help and contribute and manage an AI at a company. And obviously, this is something that would involve multiple people. It's not just a single person that would do this. And the second part to it is the fact that the way we publish and manage and test different drugs and publish articles based on those drugs, it's so incredibly inefficient. It would take months to get it reviewed and then published to something like NCBI, which is this international collection of all these articles. Incredibly slow. And at the bottom of all these articles, you'll see credits. You'll see these references to different studies. Like at this stage, it is impossible to create a study without basing it on anyone else's, because you're making an assumption based on someone else's work. And then you would have a footnote saying this claim comes from this study. Assuming that's right, this checks out. So
it's
Well,
all
I guess it'd
achievement.
be like the same.
All human achievement stands on the shoulders of giants, as they say.
exactly. I mean, not even giants. Like something based on like some discovery a month ago for one specific little gene that's the basis of another study, and it goes on like that, and that's when we make advancements.
So
So
I
with
guess it'd
AI,
be the same with my mother's field. So my mother works in health education and promotion, or she's still in school, but she's had published work. So for a field like hers, where it's diet quality screeners and stuff like that, so it's the tools of which we collect information on diet quality. So then that would be augmented with AI, because you'd still have people out in the fields, collecting this information, because people tend to respond better to people, at least at this point. But then when it comes to the, I guess, integration of the information and making sense of it, and then trying to figure out, okay, well, how do we ask because like, how do you ask the question? Okay.
right,
How do you, especially with behavioral analysis, if you word something in a certain way, people are not going to want to do it. And if you ask a question in a certain way, people are going to be either less likely or more likely to be truthful. So even in that, like, she would still get to be a part of those research teams, and making up the presentations and stuff like that. But it would be augmented through the AI. It's like, okay, based on this study, this study, this study, and this study, the actual wording of that should be X, Y, and Z. that's the way that you need to do it. And this is the coloration you need to use on the chart, because it's shown that people are more truthful if you use this color and this color with this font size. So then that's kind of stuff that like you don't have the time to think, okay, well, you know that if you use Comic Sans, people are not going to believe it. Like that's a known thing. But like when it comes to the actual all the little intricate details of spacing and font style, you don't have time to care about that. You just go, okay, that looks pretty good, and then you
Right.
send out the questionnaire. But with AI, it can just that's stuff
Exactly.
that people don't think about that AI can do. It can just
Yeah.
get all that information. So go ahead. Sorry for interrupting.
No, I mean, so with AI, when it comes to articles, it would do the same thing we do already. It would make new claims based on older ones, and it would it will conduct experiments based on old data. So it will get the idea to try a certain gene with a certain drug based on older studies, and it could just quote older studies based on that. Like I don't understand the whole. Okay, maybe it's a lost opportunity for future scientists to try that specific drug and specific gene, but it's not like the AI is making a profit. It's not like the AI is just saving time for us. There are so many genes, so many drugs to try, so many drugs that are discovered constantly that we just don't have the resources to try out and conduct studies for. I can imagine like almost like a factory, a lab completely driven by a single AI, trying out all these different drugs, trying out all these different genes, publishing these articles, basing them on older knowledge. And then it's the same thing we're already doing, just faster, just saving labor time. But here's the issue. It comes to a problem when there's a second generation of articles being made based on the first one, which are already AI based. So it's like the AI would quote another AI. That's where we have a problem. Because who validates those two things? And that's another job. That's another
a
job
good
for us.
point.
See how these jobs opens up?
Okay,
It's
yeah,
validating AI claims.
that's kind of a good point of like think of like video game testers, right? Where there used to be, it's not as big now because they use degrees of automation for video game testing, which hasn't worked out very well for Starfield. If anyone's seen some clips recently, but
I hear it's not that great.
It doesn't look that great. Todd Howard, Tell Me Sweet Little Lies starts playing, right? But the point is that there's this group of people that builds the game, and then there's an entire group of people that test the game to see how it is. And you're probably going to have a lot of that within the AI realm of a lot of software engineering will just transfer to testing out the software to make the necessary changes so that it doesn't break in certain ways. So I can totally see that with general research of like, okay, here's what the output we got from the AI. Let's start looking into it. Let's start testing it. It's also like a reporting back based on all the different labs that will then do the research of whatever the paper is. Kind of like obviously it's a sore subject at this point, but the LK99, you saw like people got to live see the peer review process effectively over the internet. It was very entertaining for a lot of people. You saw all sorts of labs just blowing up and firing up the ovens, just everyone excited. So you're going to see that to some degree with AI stuff, that the AI claims that it just created a drug that you always maintain muscle mass. You never lose any muscle mass, right? That would be something that immediately people get excited about and start reverse researching the drug and seeing how it is and seeing how it can be applied within their own AI. So there's just a race of innovation within every single possible thing you could think of within the human body. So your point to like that creates more jobs because the AI can create a ton of things at once, a ton of drug compounds, and it narrows us down to these few that will work, and we start researching it. So it just speeds us up and takes us from chasing what's the word for that, like a wild goose chase scenario, to actually tracking down the animal we want to kill, where it's not just a shooting in the dark scenario, which is kind of what we do now. It can shoot in the dark for us and tell us what it hit.
Yep.
So Other aspects that I would like to know from you is this one's a bit more conspiratorial, but granted, they did do this. They effectively genetically modified a type of mosquito to attempt to carry malaria vaccines to people. How likely this goes into like the doomer cult of like AI, where people think obviously there's the risk of we create something or a capability in some bad lab out of nowhere, or bad AI creates something to kill every human on Earth. I think most people that think that are pretty unaware of how diverse everyone is within each cell. So like eventually, like maybe you could create something that kills like 50% of us, but it wouldn't carry enough to kill everyone, basically. So it basically, it'd be very hard to kill every human with a single virus, is the point I'm making. But in theory, do you kind of see these odd methods of some sort of vaccine delivery being like abused in the future, such as the malaria one, where you have no consent to the vaccine and a mosquito just comes and bites you?
I can't speak to the vaccine method there, but I can, I guess, comment on a virus spreading based on it being created in the lab and targeting something maliciously and spreading past our control. That can definitely happen. And as far as making a virus that would, be lethal for everyone, it depends fully what you're targeting. We all have lungs, right? We all have a heart.
Okay.
We all have intestines. Something that could target some component that we all share, some organ. And if you spread it in a certain way that we couldn't escape, that we couldn't stop doing anything about, we would be doomed at this stage. We handled the past pandemic terribly. We are gonna struggle in the future with with more severe viruses for sure. And with something like genetic engineering, it's not something complicated. We already have the methods in place, and you need just not if you have a garage and few bacteria and the cells and what you want to target, you could do anything. Basically, it's incredibly easy. That's how the guy in China so easily could manipulate and change those two kids' DNA. They couldn't do any. They couldn't stop him. It's not like this amazing
regulatory
regulatory like technology.
He didn't need a hadron collider to achieve it either. Like it didn't need to be some giant billion-dollar machine. It was just.
Well, I think that's
terrifying.
At least on my opinion of this. So if we're going to talk about specifically about like the which I think we're allowed to say now that it was like lab created. So I have a theory that, and the reason why we see a lot of side effects, long-term side effects with the vaccine, is because the virus was created to have dormant long-term effects. That's my theory on it, right? So you create this virus that operates like a regular cold flu virus, but it has these very long-term effects, right? You have some neural stuff going on, right? Obviously, when you have taste getting changed and you're losing taste, um, that's not due to upper respiratory, right? So when you lose your sense of smell, that doesn't necessarily mean there's a neural thing going on, right? That's not a synapses thing. That's just due to your cold and flu stuffiness, and I don't know what
Right.
else goes on in it, right? But when you lose your taste, that is something operating in the brain. So then you have these little small little because they're like, oh, myocarditis with the vaccine. Sure. But guess what? COVID also causes those issues, right? COVID also causes that. So if we're going with the theory that it's lab created, which I think people are okay with, then to me, I can't imagine someone creates something in a lab and doesn't know that it has these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 15-year long side effects. The assumption then would be very intelligent people working on something would know that that's happening. Therefore, there would have to be some level of maliciousness or some foresight, and when they created it, knowing it would do that. So
It
then,
could be like
and I don't think
accidental
that there
side
was.
effects that are found out later, for the record. But continue. Sorry, I just wanted to add
But
that in.
and then that is very, very possible, right? Obviously, but I think that's the issue that we ran into. Just this sort of perfect storm is my theory on it. I don't necessarily think that the vaccines were done maliciously by any stretch of the imagination. I think they were just dealing with something that they didn't understand, right? And so when they went to vaccinate people, which all vaccines have mild side effects. So if you get a flu vaccine, you're going to get flu-like symptoms, right? Sometimes. So now if you get this vaccine that has these 3 or 4 to 10-year long kind of sleeper side effects, guess what some of your symptoms might be? It could be like that. And so I think that, and that's just, so I think a lot of the maliciousness that people see could just be due to the nature of the lab creation of the virus. But that's just a personal pet theory. I'm not saying that that has any credibility to it. But to me, in my mind, that starts to make a little bit of sense. And obviously, I'm no scientist. I don't get paid to be a scientist, let's put it that way. But,
I
I don't know if that
again,
sounds crazy or not.
no. The thing is, we have no evidence on, like, just from a biological perspective, we can't pinpoint any matter how it was created, whether it was by nature or any other way.
Yeah.
Um, we can say confidently, however, that we don't understand anything about the genome except those few percentages that we do have tested and mapped out and all of that. Again, a big chunk we just don't know what it does, but we know better than to remove it or silence it because it might have implications in the future, something that your
Right.
grandchildren will be struggling with because you've removed something before.
Exactly.
So that being said, I wouldn't blame a person who created a virus that had that that where the virus had unexpected side effects because there's so much we don't understand.
Okay. Yeah. So
And
even the
there's sort of
people that
that
are
perspective as
creating
well.
it when you're creating this complex structure, what you're saying is that, well, so let's say, yeah, they did create it. So we don't know. It's hard to tell if it was or wasn't, which is very difficult to understand. But there's a good chance it is. There's a good chance it isn't. Right? It's just up in the air. But what you're saying, in a situation where they did create it, not every aspect of the virus was intentional.
It couldn't
If it
possibly
was,
be.
yeah, it's not okay. So I didn't know that. So that's not. So then, but that does give more credibility to the vaccine not being malicious, as many people do think. Because if even let's say it is created, the people who created it don't understand all the different mapped out areas of it. Then certainly the people who are then trying to create countermeasures, like you said earlier, when we make a medication. Oh, okay, great. We cured your foot fungus, but we accidentally shut down all your organs. Something like that. When you're doing it at this mass, this increased speed, they made sure, okay, and the clinical trials, they didn't have that enough time, so they weren't like, okay, 5 years, what happens, right? They had to put some safety barriers down a little bit, but they didn't know what they were dealing with at the time. They didn't know what the so they didn't have the, okay, in 2 years, what's it going to be like kind of thing to work on. They're like, okay, is it killing him? No. Okay, it's working then. Okay, yeah, it's helping fight this virus, and he's not dead. Everything's going pretty well. I'm sure there's a lot more science involved, but you don't know what you don't know, I think. And I would say if this happened 30 years earlier, there wouldn't necessarily be this amount of backlash. But because a lot of the medical industry, specifically in the US, has zero credibility, I think that it was, again, I think it's the perfect storm. And the massive, easily spread
Disinformation, as well as lack of trust
disinformation.
in the
Yeah, yeah.
media and their intentions towards you. There's all sorts of stuff, and
Perfect
even the
storm.
way politicians are. I mean, if you pay attention to like the Maui situation, there's some sketchy shit going on out there, to say the least. But
The guy who said he'd buy up all the property
yeah,
during like the wake of the people like still roasting bodies. He's like, "Oh, I'll buy up all the property for you guys." It's like,
missing children, all sorts of stuff. Anyways, yeah, here, I'll compensate you for your loss. So the thing I wanted to talk to you about, because I don't know how much time I have with you, Eric, today, but I did want to ask. So I have a general. Eventually, I'm either going to have access to an AI that can help me build this, and then there are other people who are absolutely going to build this. But as far as one man, I do not have the power to build this, but AGI eventually will help me, and someone else is probably going to beat me to it and do something far better. But the point I would make is that in a cybersecurity sense, I think that AI is extremely important in the future for each individual to protect themselves. You're going to need an AI that is constantly at your back helping you, because if anyone here has ever made, anyone listening, if you've made a call to anything you can think of where you needed to give over personal details, your bank info, your social security number, you name it, right? And it says this call is recorded for quality assurance testing, right? Well, there's a problem. They might say that they cut out some of that data, but the problem is that data is streamed and stored, and it's personal, and they use it for various training stuff. So they cut out the bit that says your stuff and use it to train people for working in these call centers. The problem is all of that data has been leaked multiple times from different places. So your bank info is on the deep web, your social security number, you name it. The problem as far as like why you haven't been hit yet is just a matter of like time, right? So the point I'm making is that in a cybersecurity sense, things are pretty fucked, right? So we need AI that can come in and solve a lot of these issues, as well as harden systems to avoid these issues in the first place, and possibly create better systems. So effectively, we need AGI cybersecurity in general, some sort of agent that can literally protect people and companies alike from data leak, brute force attacks, you name it. And maybe it's a pie in the sky thing, because obviously you can create AI that will attack. So fundamentally, it's an arms race, and there has to be a countermeasure in the defender section. There's like a moral implication to this at this point, where this technology needs to be created at some point. So in the sense of like people scared of AGI coming out and deciding that it fucking hates humans and trying to steal our atoms, or just killing us all with a virus immediately, right? There is as well, in my opinion, a moral implication eventually to effectively every person on Earth is going to need to have some sort of hardening mechanism that is done through some sort of drug, where your body is effectively made impenetrable from novel virus. This all goes to longevity and stuff, but there's going to be a race to that won't be a vector of attack for anyone, AI or bad actor included. So how likely do you think that this is as a possibility? So I'm not the best programmer, but I am a programmer. So I can see how, at least in a sense, how AGI will achieve significant ability to create extremely secure systems. And basically, nobody has any cyber leaks. Nobody anymore is hacked. Everything is managed by your AI, and you don't have to worry about anything, honestly. Nobody can get in your bank. You're good. So in a genetic sense, on drugs and you name it, like, to what degree do you think that this is actually possible? Because I personally, just from a layman's position where I just know a little bit about things like this, but I think like it's something we're going to need to do to like protect humanity effectively. How likely do you think this actually is? I know it requires AGI for the record, but like, is it possible to effectively harden each human to any virus created?
So okay. There are a lot of components to this. Obviously, there's a lot to think about, but the cybersecurity comparison was a very good one, actually, because it sort of goes hand in hand in this case. If we look at how we dealt with bacteria in the past, if you got a cut, like if you cut yourself, you were fucked. You would die because we didn't have any idea or any way to deal with the infection. We can't deal with or kill bacteria until someone accidentally discovered antibiotics. Without that, I don't know where we would be right now. It was pure luck, basically. We can't afford luck in something like this because viruses, it's a completely new. It's you can't just put someone in a room and be fine. Like, depending on how the virus spreads, it might stay on the surface in which someone has been like 8 hours ago. You might breathe the same air and be in like some vicinity, and you might catch it. It's a completely different like ballpark than just a bacteria. So in order to create something, I don't know if it's a drug or if it's a preventive measure that would work for each specific person, you would need something like AGI for sure. Because we can, I'm sure if you left AGI with just a bacteria, it could figure out the concept of antibiotics. It could look at nature and what we know and what we have noted down and probably say this might have antibiotic properties. Could it do the same for a virus? Probably. We just don't understand it. We can't think of the idea. So to find a way to kill viruses the same way we have a drug or a method for killing bacteria, we could probably produce the same thing for viruses. For sure, but using AGI again, unless we accidentally discover something like that.
So
But I don't know.
the danger of this field is obviously what, in theory, maybe happened with COVID, is that in cybersecurity, you have to create viruses or penetration methods or attack your own systems in general in order to harden yourself against each and every individual one, especially at like a high scale, extremely important data like a bank, right? You have to, as a cybersecurity team, you've got your red team and your blue team, and one is always trying to break in. You have different companies that you hire consistently to do what's called penetration testing, and they try to break into your system. And that's their whole job all day, is try to hack your shit. And I think that the danger, but the necessity, is eventually that your AGI sits there and makes the most insane viruses that we couldn't even think of right now and figures out how to harden your system against it. So there's danger in all things here, but I think my ultimate point is just that, like, it's a moral implication at this point where it has to be done because it will be done by bad actors. We're talking about significant advancement in power. So the entire human race is about to get so much power that it's insane. So you need to have countermeasures that are just as powerful, if not more powerful, in the defense sense. So, the ultimate argument to, like, that we're to talk to Yud about this, and everyone probably knows a little bit about him, Yudkowsky, is that his argument is that eventually, if it's smart enough, it is going to wake up and kill us all for whatever reason, just because it feels like we're a hindrance to itself, right? And there's a way to do that. I think that AI is a double-edged sword, and especially in the medical sense, eventually it'll be this way as well, where we need to make our side as sharp as possible, so to speak. It's a bad analogy, but the point is like, we need to, in this figurative fight, just have better weapons. It's an arms race. So that's why I, in general, believe in like accelerating this as fast as possible, because every problem that it will create, we will have a solution to based on that advancement. So that's my general point to all that. And I guess your general sense is that, yes, it's possible, but how long do you think obviously this is where it's like pie in the sky stuff. So it's probably, I would say you'd think it's like 10 to 20 years overall with AGI.
It's not a method that we would develop. It all depends on AGI and the data we have and what it could execute and come up with. Because again, like with the example I brought up earlier, it's bringing luck out of the equation, because it would, like you said, be offered so much power and so much understanding to find all possible, paths to achieve something like that. So it's nothing that we can pinpoint. It all depends on AGI, to be honest, because the integration after that is the least of our concerns. And again, with capitalism being a factor, It's going to be a competition for who's first and who can patent whatever it comes up with. And that's the invitation to create more AI. And who can do that? That's a question for who's the product manager for those. Those are people.
Are these
And there's
are these labs buying like tons of GPUs now for running AlphaFold and stuff?
Not officially.
Are they just renting compute, or are they buying it? Like, I don't know if you know, but I was just curious.
Yeah. So what I can say from with the institute I'm with, they are. Okay, I can't actually talk about that now.
Okay.
But yeah, they are being offered more GPUs. Yes.
Okay.
That's good. That's a good way to put it.
Okay, I just wanted to figure out if you can run Crisis in there.
That's something they would. So all these labs, that's something we would know in probably like a year or something, because this is what we're going to be looking back at. Like while all these big discoveries and achievements are being made, how much of it had how much computing power, and what part used this much? That's what we're going to discover in a year from now. But right now, that's all like secretive.
Fair enough.
For everything, that's not something you can ask a company, because that's indirectly saying, because this company has more GPU power or whatever, it's going to have an edge over the other one. So
the bright side,
that whole aspect to it.
The bright side about all this is that all compute is increasing, as well as manufacturing of compute. So we're even getting micro processor labs here being built up in America. So America traditionally is very good at manufacturing as well, as far as like efficiency. And if anyone knows a little bit about World War I and World War II, as far as our manufacturing capabilities, we're very good. So in general, the output, we need to be. Yes, exactly. But the output of compute, as far as just scale of systems being built, is exponential at this point. Every year it's probably so screw the part where we're doubling as far as like per chip. We're going to be like doubling as far as per total compute probably every year or two from here on out, just because of the sheer demand that NVIDIA as a single company is getting. So GPU factories go burr right now is what I'm saying.
For sure. That's funny too, because I mean, of course, the AI we use and machine learning tech that was already there before language models were as popular as they are today. It's funny to see how big of a factor GPUs are already, and we don't even have something remotely close to AGI. So I can only imagine how much of a deal it will be in the future. It's more of a like preparing until that point. That's why you'll see more companies getting into it now, because they don't want to be left behind. Because at a certain point, the first one who gets there will dominate in so many fields that it's just crazy to think about.
To me personally, the whole COVID thing has been, I think, very white pilling for me. Like, just because of what we said about not understanding the scope and every intricate part of the sequencing of the virus, right? That's just not feasible for us. But in a scenario with AI, it's going to be able to look at all of that, and it's going to be able to understand all the outcomes. It's going to be able to say, hey, whoa, now look, there's actually some stuff you don't know that you wouldn't know, that you're not going to know until 10 years down the line, but it already knows it. And so, so same thing that you said about medication. To me, that's obviously it all comes back to alignment, right? And that's just because morality is such a complex thing in general. It's you know um, ethics is pretty cut and dry, but morality is very complicated. Although ethics can be quite complicated as well, but maybe interchangeable. But yeah, obviously, all things bearing well, I think that's just such a massive increase to our understanding of what's going on. And maybe this is incorrect, but
go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, I was going to say, we talked about the diet soda a little bit, and I don't remember if the studies are unfounded or what the deal is. So basically, like when it was created, a lot of these artificial sugars and sweeteners were for diabetics, diabetics that are a little bit older. So like they did not intend for 10-year-olds and 8-year-olds to be drinking diet soda for 40 or 50 years. That's not an intended, thing. They're like, okay, hey, there's some negative effects, but if you're 55, 60 years old, you've only got 20 or 30 years left anyways. 20 or 30 years drinking these chemical compounds, the effects are not really going to present themselves, right?
Fair point.
But if you're 10, you've got 70 years of ingesting these chemicals. That's going to do some damage to you eventually. And so there's a lot of products out there that are like that. That it's like, okay, well, but that we don't understand. Like microplastics, you got hormones in the water. Like there's so many different things that we're like, is it killing anyone in the moment? No, we're probably. But an AI is gonna be like, guys, whoa, 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 you don't realize what you've done here. You absolute fools. And after 50 years of whatever, it's gonna make your arms fall off.
So
It's just right. It's gonna go to your thighs, and then you'll explode.
a lot of lack of scientific advancement right now in basically all fields is the fact that no human can talk to every person, right? So no lab can talk to every other lab. So there's a large degree of within different fields of what is currently known. That information is not even readily available to everyone on a level where they understand where it might be important to the topic of whatever they're trying to solve. With AI, you have infinite throughput. So eventually it can look like he was saying before at every single paper. And once we get to the point where we have trillions of attention tokens or whatever degree of advancement we go along with AI, as far as we might go away from tokenization entirely. We might just refine our processes of compounding down information, but eventually it will be able to take every piece of paper that has ever been written on science, good and bad, and look at all of them at once. That is the most insane thing that we could even conceive of in any point in our past, that effectively all human writing could be looked at once. This is what's coming. And not only will it be able to look at all that, it can look at all fiction and all lies, all court papers. Eventually, you're going to get to the point where AGI can take every bit of data that it has access to, it, read it all at once, and come to conclusions about things. Because if you hand Claude isn't perfect, right? But it has 100K token context. I frequently hand it entire documents of code just to find bits that I need, or ask it if this particular framework or API that I'm working with can do this particular thing. How do I get it to do this? And it can go through that entire thing very quickly and explain the bullet points of what I need to know. And then I can take that and either use it directly or explain it to another AI and have it build a module for me real quick. You can throw shit at a wall with AI. And for as far as like coding is concerned right now, vast majority of the Python scripts I make, I don't know Python. I'm not like, that was not the thing that I started with programming. I know Python through just working with like GPT-4. That's it. I don't know it in any other way. I've never bothered to look it up, as far as I only know a little bit from when I first started programming and started playing a little bit with Python. But I have quite a few like programs that I built myself that, as far as like I had AI help me put them together. And that's like a thing I never had to like technically educate myself on. And the point I'm making is, when you get to the point where this thing can pay attention to everything, we're on levels of advancement that aren't even conceivable, because it can take, and I'm serious, like sci-fi concepts and compare them to papers and see how close we might be just based on all the things it can pay attention to. It's going to figure out things based on all of our current knowledge and give us new knowledge that we will have to then, like he said, adding more jobs, retrofit and see if this thing that's saying passes the smell test. And eventually it's going to have a pretty high percentage of passing that smell test, just based on its ability to infer upon all knowledge.
Okay, I'd like to just comment on this, and then I really have to go. It's getting quite late. But okay, so I just want to say, with something like AGI, just being able to pump out all these papers and comparisons to, for this example, sci-fi concepts, and then comparing what we already know with that, and possibly even inventing those things based on what we already have and making methods. It would create, like, every invention, if you think about it, they create jobs, right? They create things to improve, things to think about, things to, I mean, just from a marketing perspective as well. When it comes to companies, of course, each invention will have its own market almost. So it's hard to think that it's just going to cut off jobs. It will do so initially. I do believe that. And and we will need to think of things to help the generation that will be affected by this. And I think it'll be very soon that a whole generation of college graduates will be screwed. But after that, it'll be like heaven for them, for everyone looking for a job, because there'll just be so many things to get into. It's not just like, it's not going to be a monopoly where one company has this AGI that'll be able to think of all these different things. No, it's a company that will be able to make improvements in a way that no one ever has and create more things for people to do. So I'm as optimistic as I am concerned with this. And these are just short-term things. Long-term, it's everything we need, of course.
Well, you also have rapid acceleration of education. I mean, OpenAI, just this week, they pulled out a new program where they're working with educators to show them exactly the limitations of ChatGPT and how it works, and integrating that into general education of people. So it's not just that like new jobs get created. Your ability to get educated on how to come in and do this is just going to be rapid in comparison to now. So even if like the job market's constantly switching through this mass advancement, you're going to be caught up to speed very quickly by just interacting with the AI.
Oh, for sure. And I only said college graduates just as an example. It's what I would suggest for anyone getting into any computational field, for example. I would suggest that they should hurry and try to secure a spot in what they want to do at least, because then they can hyper specialize based on what the market is or what is going on in the field in general, and then they can have a quote unquote secured position, and that they know exactly what they want to do, and then you go from there about what the opportunities are. We are not in. I'm sorry, we are luckier. We're not as lucky as the previous generation was in that they can just toss a coin and see where they go. No, we have to know exactly what we want to do and focus on it. That's the exchange. In order to have all these opportunities in the future, where there are more jobs than there are people, we need to know exactly what to do now to make that transition. So that's what I would suggest short term. Otherwise, I think we're good. That's what I would say.
Yeah. Well, I know you got to get out of here. It's pretty late in Sweden, so
it was great having you on.
Thank you for coming on. You can come on anytime you want. By the way, I don't even care to have other guests. Like, just jump in.
No, I love talking about all kinds of stuff with you guys. You very nice. I didn't quite catch your name.
Fucking dumb. Oh, never mind.
No,
yeah. What's your name, Mr. Intense? He wants to meet you.
Mr. Intense.
Johnny. Jonathan, cool. But everyone just calls me Johnny. So.
All right. It was a pleasure talking to you, and obviously,
great talking to you.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you so much for having me.
Have a nice
night. See you guys soon, hopefully.
Yep. See you. Sleep well.
Bye.
So that is one of the smartest people I know, and he's very humble, for the record. But
he seems extremely humble.
Been trying to get him on for weeks and weeks and weeks. He's so damn busy. He doesn't even talk about his own accolades. Like he built like an entire program that goes through papers and finds like novel drugs that might work for your own genetic set. So you hand it your DNA test, and it goes through all the papers of drug research that they have in the database, and then tells you what has like this percentage chance of working with you with less symptoms.
Side effects, symptoms, stuff like that.
Yeah, he's very.
The old way to do that was just try the different medications. So, which I did, which is especially if you're a kid. So when I got on ADHD medication, the one I'm on now is perfect. But I went through about 4 or 5 of them, and some of them I would just be like, "Wow, this works great," and then I would come off of it, and I'd be like, I don't know, I was like 11. I'd come off it and I'd just cry. I'd just go in my room and cry. I'd just be like, and then one of them would make me have so much stomach pain, like such an incredible amount of stomach pain. And then there was the one where like, I'd just crash off of it, just crash. I'd come home, it'd wear off, and I'd just have I'd just be like, couldn't handle anything. Also a child, so, it doesn't help. Your
pussy.
emotional regulation at a child. Little pussy.
Little
Look at him.
bitch, Johnny. Like can't hold his shit together.
This is 11-year-old.
Well, I mean, there's even like interesting, like opioids like will make you constipated. So it's pretty. It's not weird that like your stomach hurts and stuff like that. So it there's a lot of weird side effects, but something. What was I going to bring up other than because we kind of went on the drug path.
Other than threatening past children.
Oh, speaking of like threatening, I kind of wanted to talk to you a little bit about this. So it's a bit unfair because the person isn't there, but effectively there was like a minor debate that was frankly fucking boring to listen to because the one guy on the Twitter space who was talking about it, and I talked a little bit of here and there. My usual debate tactic is, okay, how do you do this? Or why, right? Because at some point, like you need a why or a how. And when you have someone that's saying that, they'll start saying something that's effectively a wish. I wish things were this way. Okay, how? Right? That's the crux of any argument eventually is, I don't care what you think about this. I want to know how you think it could happen because otherwise we're philosophically talking about something. So it's unfair to talk without the person there, but I don't care at this point. But basically it was a very boring debate in which one person was saying that effectively we should end all suffering. They're like a vegan, right? And they're very like into science and understand. So there's the possibility of advancement where there's a book that I really like, X-Force, I mention it all the time, where in the first book they introduce you to like an alien race. It's kind of like a yeoman farmer type group. They're very just like providing, but they are technologically advanced. But at one point, the main character goes into a barn and sees the animals, and he's looking at them, and he realizes they don't have a face, right? And he's like, "What the hell?" Right? And turns out they genetically modified like stacks of meat that can just walk around, and they have ways that they feed them or whatever. But there is
with his head cut off.
There is no pain. There is no thought. It is not a cow, effectively, right? And they basically lecture
because
the
even
humans.
trees,
they lecture the humans. They lecture the humans about how barbaric they are. That they still do this practice, but they understand that they're not technologically advanced enough to do this. So basically, all of their meat is, very like moral because the thing can't have a thought before you shoot it, right, and eat it. So basically, this is the crux of what this person was talking about: is like we have some sort of moral implication to effectively end all suffering. So one of my questions to them was, okay, we can end all suffering on all things. Do we give bees longevity? How many bees are enough? Right? Like, how do we stop the bees from stinging people?
What do we do with all the cows we have? We just kill them? We let them die off?
I really hate when someone like starts talking about this because it just becomes this weird thing of like, okay, so you just want humans to die. Because if your argument is to eventually solve this in the far out future where like we're fucking harnessing the power of Dyson spheres on stars and we're able to
need cows.
We're able to create some situation where all these animals live in harmony and never eat each other, and I guess they sit on wireless chargers and charge their ass or something, right? The point is we're genetically modifying them to a point where like they can't suffer, I guess. It just becomes this weird like fantasy in their head where we can end all suffering for insects. We can end all suffering for birds, bees, cows, pigs, right? Like everything's just in harmony. Nothing
I'm
has
trying
to
to
eat the
take
other
this
thing.
seriously. I'm
I
sorry.
know. And this is like a real person who is saying this, and they're not kidding. They really think that this is like some moral implication that we eventually need to go to. So it's like, okay, if that's your position, right? Like I watched the Monty Python Life of Brian recently, where it's like I want the right to have children, even though I can't have children as a man, right? Like it's a whole joke about that, right? About and in that time, that's like completely ridiculous. So that's why they're making fun of it. Now we're having these debates now, but the point is with this topic in particular, how do we solve it, and why do we solve it, right? So are you saying this is just to I want to let you speak on this. Eventually gets to the point is like, okay,
I'm getting heated.
Do you want to solve this far out in the future? And we think of this as like, oh, that would be a cool concept to solve in some sect of the galaxy. Things the bees never fucking suffer, I guess, somehow, or the animals in general, nothing suffers. This would take a ton of fucking energy, is the point. So to solve it now, you're just going to kill people. So this is something that's important to you to solve in the future, or is it important to solve it now? And basically this person had to leave eventually, so we never really got down to the nitty gritty of the debate. So I wanted to bring this to you because it's such a fucking bass backwards. Like, we don't have the power to do this now. Why are you even thinking about it? We need to eat things. Things need to eat things. We got to eat. I'm going to eat a cow. You're not stopping me.
Yeah, so I think, first of all, is that there's a million ways I could go with this. Okay, so the first one is the idea of consent, right? So I had this argument where I was like, well, because this is a while ago, someone was saying that most of the animal kingdom relations are non-consensual, right? And I made the argument that there's no such thing as consent in the human way in the animal kingdom, because the way that we see it is informed, right? That's the way that we see it. And so this does track back into it, trust me. Now, I'm not going to pretend that there's not violent relations in the animal kingdom, and there's definitely times where the animal clearly doesn't want it going on. But consent in the way that a human defines it is informed one. So you would have to then prove that animal conceptually understood what was happening in the process of gestation, and that they were going to then give birth. And it doesn't have it's just following instinctual patterns, right? If you did try to argue that, then there's going to be some people who might look at their dog a little bit differently and be like, well, he was wagging his tail. There's just no consent. It doesn't exist. That's why you can't do it. It's unethical, right? So if we're talking about genetically modifying the behavior of creatures so that they don't eat other creatures, the only way to do that ethically is to give them the same sentience as a human being, so then they can decide for themselves if they want that. So let's say you take a praying mantis, right? And you don't want the praying mantis to eat the fly, because that's bad, because the fly suffers, the praying mantis, it's actually doing these horrible things. The only way to do that ethically from a non-suffering standpoint is to give the praying mantis the level of intelligence where it understands the argument you're making and then can decide if it wants to be modified. But even furthermore, how can the praying mantises make that argument for the future generation of praying mantises? How can you say, I'm going to now genetically modify this entire species? Totally ethical. It's totally ethical for me to do this because I'm playing God, basically. And like, I'm fine with the genetic modification of species, but I'm also not for the total ending of all suffering and all things must live in harmony. I'm a realist. So I'm not being a hypocrite. I'm arguing from their position. So like, I eat things, I kill things. That's the nature of life. I suffer, they suffer. That's reality. So you see what I'm getting at? Because what you're saying now is I'm going to take, and here's the other part of the argument. The other part is that is a very Western, a very mostly Western idea on food. So now you're saying, okay, well, my morals and values as this first world Westerner, which the assumption is that they are, right? The person you were talking to, they were from
they had an American
shocking.
accent. Yeah,
Color me shocked. So now you're going to go in and you're going to go into a place. Well, even like India. They don't eat cow, right? Or Muslims don't eat pork. So there is cultural for not eating certain things, but there is a cultural precedent for eating certain things as well. I think the Jewish people can't do like dairy and meat mixed together. I think they also don't do pork.
I
Point
think they
being is
don't
now
do
you're going to say,
shellfish,
okay,
am I right?
they don't, but I think it's the combination of um, milk products with beef. I think they think that's maybe I'm mistaken. Maybe that's like the Hasidic Jews that do that. There's some branch that take it more seriously. Point being is so now we're saying okay, my ideas out trump all of that. Okay, so you over on this island where it's a part of your religion to eat this bird there that you guys farm. Uh, um, it's a part of your right to grow up. Fuck that. That doesn't mean shit to me. You guys are backwards. This is the ethical thing. So now not only have you had to take the cows and give them sentience because otherwise it's unethical. It's completely unethical. It's fucking unethical to make decisions for an animal and every future generation of that species.
You make a good point. Is that like you're enacting your will upon this thing that what if it likes killing things?
A thing of lesser intelligence.
There's sure as hell a lot of pleasure in,
You met a
an
cat?
animal. A lot
ever
of
met a cat?
pleasure in an animal finally getting the hunt, right? Like so
Yeah,
there's
absolutely.
endorphins that release that are an evolutionary thing that rewards that behavior. And then another aspect is like this person says they're vegan and another person said another person who was very I'm going to be insulting soy as it gets they were like commentating on this and effectively like, I wish I could be vegan, but I can't for stomach reasons or some bullshit. But the point is that this vegan is effectively, they have the moral high horse of like veganhood, right? They're a bit more grounded as far as they did understand that like a lot of this tech. So they kind of agreed with me to some degree. It was like, basically I was just like, we can't solve this until this point of technology and we're not there yet. So I don't know why we're talking about this.
And even when we get there, there is an ethical dilemma of should we do this? Should we do that? I mean, hell, people are upset. People are upset the same, which is fascinating to me. It's absolutely so if you're anti-abortion and then you're against the insemination of embryos and then looking at the genetics and getting rid of them, that is a logically consistent, right? Logically consistent. You believe life begins at conception. I'm not saying I'm for or against, right? But you have logical consistency. You say, I don't think that we should get rid of fetuses. I think that embryos that have been fertilized are they're special. They have life. Whatever. I'm all against that. Okay, that's your opinion. Agree or disagree, it doesn't matter. But there's people out there that are like very pro-abortion, but then when it comes to the eugenics thing, they're like, oh, that's horrible. I'm like, so what? I can like throw it in a dumpster when it's like 4 months along, but I can't when it's an embryo.
Yeah.
If I'm trying to make it like, well, where's the logical? There's like a lot of people have
eugenics
no
will be rebranded,
consistency.
and it'll be very much like CRISPR stuff, and most people will modify their babies. We've had a pretty long talk on this before. If I could chime in real quick though to mention something, it's like
because I'm
part of the delusion with this person, and you know, like people get this way. Like you know, it's a religious thought, right? That I'm doing a good thing. I'm eating only vegan, but the ultimate like thing that this person either is horribly unaware of or they don't want to talk about it is that you have to kill so much shit to make your vegan meals. There are so many animals that need to die. There needs to be a lot of pesticides that like kills.
And most of those are just out in nature. Those are not farmed animals. Those are animals that are existing in the ecosystem.
You have to kill massive amounts of pigs because there's pigs all over the South within like farmlands that go out and they'll just eat the seeds of your whatever vegan seed for your tofu plants. You name it, right? But there's predators that go and kill the other animals. out there as well. Like you're creating like an ecosystem of death.
Pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, insecticides.
It is impossible to avoid death in the creation of energy within the context of biology. It is impossible. You need to eat something, or something has to eat something in order to give you the energy you need. So even with plants, they're eating corpses, right? They're eating corpses, manure. There's all sorts of stuff within the fertilizer that is something that was broken down from something else. And the manure is an animal ate another animal and took a crap. Is another part of it, as well as because we even use human fertilizer sometimes, and humans eat meat, and there's just all sorts of aspects to this where there's no free meal. We don't have this yet. We do not have this technology. So until we get to that point where you can print in the fabricator with just electricity your tuna sandwich, right? You're going to have to kill fish to eat tuna. There's no way to stop that. And there's no moral high ground here, as is evident in current times, because we lack the technology entirely to make tofu a deathless arrangement, or whatever massive amount of like stuff that people think is like vegan, right? You cannot avoid killing things in order to eat. Something has to die.
And I'll say this. If you're just like, I personally am not comfortable with eating meat, yeah, dude, totally fine. If you decide that, okay, because you can be a vegetarian or a vegan and you can be healthy. It's more difficult, not because that lifestyle is necessarily unhealthy, but because of the environment of food that we have is not catered to that. So in order to get the
Takes a lot of supplementation.
necessary takes a lot of supplementation, because a lot of the foods that we have, especially in the vegetable and fruit community, have been overgrown. So they have a lot less nutrients. They're a lot less nutrient dense. So maybe 50 or 60 years ago, if you had your own farm, you could be a vegetarian. You could just grow it all yourself. It would be easier. But a lot of the food we eat is garbage, and that's why meat is such a great supplement for nutrients. It's fantastic for that. So I'm not going to sit here and be like, "Oh, you can't be healthy and be a vegetarian." It's my sister's been a vegetarian since she was 12 years old. She's pretty healthy for the most part, but it's been a struggle to get to that point because of a lot of the vegan vegetarian food is not super. Just eating fruits and vegetables is fine, but a lot of the faux meat, fake meat, is not very nutrient dense. It's not that great. It's shit.
A dark irony to a lot of the vegans and even vegetarians is that things, I think especially for vegans, I think Oreos are vegan. So there's like a few separate things that are really unhealthy that they just eat all the time and stay. I'm vegan. Mm-hmm. So just a funny thing to mention.
So there's that. So I'm not knocking vegetarians and vegans. So if you want to do it because of an environmental issue, you're like, okay, there's the methane, whatever. I think that, is the environment. Now that can be contested a little bit, because also like monocrop farming, we mentioned all the sides, the pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, insecticides, all that's terrible for the environment. The way that we do farming is bad for the environment. But if you decide that this one's a little bit better than that one, that's fine. The problem becomes when you try to make an ethical debate about it. Okay, so the common thing is, well, plants don't feel pain. Okay, well, in what way do they not feel pain? So a plant has senses, right? A tree has senses. The sun's coming up, the leaves are turning, it recognizes that's where the sun is, so it's sensing sunlight. It feels the sunlight, and the way of the feeling is a sense. So your sense of smell, in one way or another, is a feeling. You smell the grass, it smells great, right? So that's a sense. So they have senses. Now, when a plant is injured or attacked, it has a sense specifically for that. What would you call that? What would you call when a living creature has a sense specifically derived in cases of damage to itself? What is that? Any guesses?
Defense, pain, stuff like that.
That's pain. That's what that is. Now, because, I can't say that it's excruciating, right? But I highly doubt evolution made the plant get injured and be like, woo, it's great. Loving this. Loving this. It can become distressed. Plants can become distressed. Plants can die if you move them incorrectly. If you move them incorrectly and they're too young, they become distressed and they die. So,
I think the line between
what then
eat
is
and don't eat for most people is how hungry am I. I would never eat a dog unless it's the only thing left to eat and it's the apocalypse. I'm eating your dog. That's my point. I think
if it's somebody's
it's a luxury,
family pet, I'm probably not going to eat it.
It's a
But
luxury
if it's cooked up,
situation.
it's in front of me.
It's a luxury situation to be either vegan or even vegetarian to some extent. The rest of the world cannot afford to do this. They need to eat chicken. They need
The steppe people eat horse, and it looks delicious. I'm not gonna lie, it looks delicious. A lot of people are like horses. Oh my god, you'd eat horse? Have you seen what they've been doing with horse meat? Yes, I would absolutely try it. The thing with dog is like, have you seen what a dog looks like? It's stringy. They're not very they're dirty creatures. No offense to the dog lovers out there, but their diets are not that great. Their muscle is not something that you'd really want to eat. So it's like this stringy kind of garbage meat. So even if it's not really, for me, it's not an ethical thing. It's just like, why the hell would I eat that? Look at that thing. I'd pet it, but I wouldn't eat the damn thing.
I love most dogs, so I pretty much wouldn't eat it just on it reminds me of Fido type thing. You should be slightly concerned with her, by the way, for what she just said.
I mean, if it's cooked up in front of me, I totally would. Like, I'm not going to go out and steal my neighbor's pet. But if I'm in in a Southeast Asian country, or I think there's one European country that used to, maybe it was I can't think of the country, but they've eaten dog before, right? So if it's in front of me, it's cooked up, and they're like, "Oh, here, try it." I'm not going to be like, "I can't do." Yeah, I'll try it, right?
I met a cargo plane pilot who frequently went back and forth to China, and he said explicitly that he would not eat when he was in China. He refused because he said there were so many times where he'd be at the little place to get food, the little little market area off the beaten path and stuff, and he'd just be looking at it and he's like, I have never seen a piece of meat that looks like that, so that's not anything I want to touch. I don't know who, what, or how that got here, but I'm not eating that shit.
Frog, turtle, squirrel, dog, cat.
I think I'm more or less the same with it. Starts looking a little strange. I'm like, that might not be something I want to eat. But the point is, it's a luxury thing because if you're hungry enough, I'll eat fucking anything. It's just the way it is. So I think that is ultimately this moralism with vegan stuff is that ultimately you're in a wealthy country and you can afford to do this. This is an extremely expensive process to create vegan food.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the other thing is that you wouldn't say that your morals are the set standard, right? What you're saying here is you have a close relationship with dogs, right? And they're somewhat intelligent. Pigs are very intelligent. I don't have a close relationship with any pigs.
My morals are based on how hungry I am. If we're trapped in a room together long enough and I feel like I can survive if I eat you, we're going to do battle, Johnny. That's what I'm telling you. No matter how much I love you, I might eat you.
There's circumstantial morals, right? There's circumstantial morals, and then there's your generalized. Your generalized morals, from what I understand, for what you're going to eat is probably based off of familiarity and intelligence. So what is my social interaction with this creature, and what is its intelligence?
Would you eat a gecko?
Back to the tree thing. Yeah, why not?
Like a deep fried one?
They fry it up. Yeah. Oh, now you got me. I'm gonna go have one right now. So with the tree thing, well, why is it okay to eat the tree then? If it feels pain and it responds in that way, which is, what else are you going to call it? And people are like, oh, it doesn't feel the pain in the way that you as a human being are describing it. Okay. And you're like, well, okay, so then what's the only argument? Is intelligence. Well, what is intelligence? It's not intelligent in the way that you are perceiving it to be, because intelligence is, here's the word, buzzword time. It's a socially constructed idea, right? Okay. It is. Intelligence out in nature without society has no meaning. It has no value. There is no such thing, right? Now, I will say for a scientist, there is clear, within society, there is clear intelligence. There is clear mappable things, and there's different types, right? But within a pure naturalistic form, um, that's not really something that's going to come into context at all. It's not something that's necessary. So you're now taking these social standards and you're saying, okay, because I believe this thing, because of the society that I live in, this is what's ethical. Everyone has to do this, and it's fucking bullshit.
Your
I'm just it's
your
fucking
webcam's going at about a
bullshit.
frame every 3 seconds, and it's
Sorry.
fucking hilarious because just you like
My
freeze
webcam
framing.
knows I'm getting heated.
You're freeze framing at different parts of your argument, so it's kind of it's hilarious. It just- Damn
Yeah,
it.
so that's my thing. Like, if you want to live the life the way that you want to live it, that's totally fine. But the issue comes in when you become so stringent and strict in the way that other people need to live their
It's a
lives as
religion.
well, and it's just bullshit. Yeah,
It's a religion, and that's like the ultimate kind of like point I wish I could have made to this person throughout is like, you have a religious implication for why you think that this should be something that we even fucking care about. To be frank, right, is like why we waste resources in the now to achieve somewhat of it, and we can't achieve it properly in any way. This like thing of like ending all suffering, it's just the amount of energy it takes. It's just pure energy. It takes so much energy. We need fusion. We need maybe Dyson spheres. I don't know. The point is like to actually do that, a lot of compute, a lot of genetic modification, a lot of weird shit. They acknowledge that like creatures would be different along a path of like creating the system. And it's just like, well, why do we even keep all these different things around if we're just creating shit that won't eat each other? Like, I don't understand. Like, I guess I can understand the perspective of this person where they want like to end all suffering, but at some point it just becomes this semantic thing of like, we can't do that right now. So why are we talking about this?
Yeah. So I mean, like even let's say something that doesn't have, let's say it has the intelligence of a tree, the way that we're kind of defining it. We make a cow with the intelligence of a tree, right? If I start stabbing at it and it starts like tensing up and reacting, right? Okay, there may not be any conscious thought there, but there's pain receptors going off. In some way, is that unethical? Like, I don't know.
I want
Like,
an
we're getting to
animation of you
such
fighting an int.
just sort of, and yeah, so
one of the walking
plants
trees
don't
from
feel,
Lord of the Rings.
yeah, plants don't feel pain the way that we understand it because they don't have nerve receptors. They don't have pain receptors, but they have their own form of that. And so to say that it is or isn't suffering, if we're going for the whole end suffering thing, what are we going to fucking eat? What are we eating? Are we eating bacteria? And like, well, at some point we could, right? So if we want to say, like you said, in 40 years, 50 years, 60 years, 300 years, whatever the fuck it takes, then that's fine. But then to like shame everyone for not ascribing to your little specific bullshit is crazy.
Hey guys, why aren't we trying to solve this? Well, look, we can't solve it yet, so let's work towards being able to even possibly solve it. Like, just jump in and stop weighing us down. Like, that's how it feels.
Stop bitching.
Yeah, it's
like we're clearly
strange.
If it's a basis of technology, right? To get to that point, then supporting the continued innovation within all fields will lead us to that point.
So yeah, you got to eat a lot of cows.
What you're doing is
you need to feed the engineers.
What you're doing is you're making people in general, even when we have the technology, like, fuck you. I've been listening to your shit for 30 years. Okay. And now, you know what? When we have the technology, guess what?
I'm eating more cows.
I'm not going to fucking use it. I'm going to eat more fucking cows because they hate you. That's all you've done. You've created people who are, because that's how human beings work, right?
You think vegans
it doesn't
would be
matter
hated
if
by
you're
cows
right.
as cows are sentient?
I don't know. Cows probably. I have no idea. I don't know.
That's not a serious question, Johnny. It's not serious in any way.
Well, no, but here's the thing. Like, if I right now was going to die, I'd at least want something to eat me. I want to be put in a fucking box.
You don't want to be incinerated?
No, let some eat me.
I think a lot of people are probably going to be going towards like no longer incinerating themselves, except for rare cases. But like for instance,
No one else gets my organs. They can eat me. Okay, I'll have like a dog or like a cow or something like a, just put my energy into something else.
Well, there's these like mushrooms that they effectively like put in a box with you in it, and they eat you, eats all your bones, over a period of time.
I'm ready.
So the point is I think a lot more people are going to kind of that'll be kind of how you just kind of a burial, but not the same, where you're not wasting like a plot area on Earth where your corpse is. But
forget the mushrooms. It's my family.
You
they gotta cut me. I'm 120 years old. I'm all
fucking Johnny Steaks. Is that what you're fucking offering?
And if they want in my will, they want the money.
So on a cannibalistic front, right? Is it ethically amoral to not stay in shape so that you have good cuts of meat late into life for your family to eat?
That's wow, yeah.
Does it become unethical to not stay in shape?
You don't want them to eat garbage meat.
Yeah, it's just all fat. What are they going to make soup? Old Johnny Soup, I think, dude, your background is destroying your latency on your webcam. It's so messed up.
I bet it is. We're back, baby. We're back.
You're not. No, your computer's crying over there, dude. We need to pull up Atlas OS on your system or something. We'll talk about it when
the video broadcast just does not work for me very good.
Yeah, because your system has latency issues.
What do you mean when you say that?
I mean that you have 3 frames per second right now with a 2080 Super, which is an extremely good card. Or 2080.
Yeah, my 2080 Super runs extremely well. I actually I did the baseline tests. It's pretty much where it should be.
Yeah.
For 20. I think it's slightly below, but I've had it and been really just running the hell out of it. So
they've found, especially if you maintain compute hardware pretty well, it never really deteriorates.
I just keep it running all the time.
The point is like you're not going to deteriorate it unless you're overclocking it significantly, and even then maybe not,
which I don't do.
But the point is, if it's running at specs, it can run for 10 years. The problem is to do with the software bloat, is why like people's performance goes down.
Oh, I have to. That's why I use the Razer Synapse.
Yeah, you
and I just cut everything out in the background that's running, except for my game.
If I could sit you down and show you how to do like a bunch of stuff, like one of the things would be like Atlas OS, and then showing you how to go into services and stopping a bunch of stuff you don't need. My system runs. It
does it for me.
It's better if it's this way. Trust me, bro. I'm a scientist. Whatever. The point is, you can really optimize a system by using just a pre.
I'm not a power user.
Yeah, that's what I am. But yeah,
I don't know if you've heard that term.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess I am. I have a 4090 in my system, so like that puts me at the very least. I'm an enthusiast when it comes to computers. So. Speaking of that, they pretty much are rolling out beta access to Counter-Strike 2. I got to play that a little last night.
Whoa!
It feels like a clunky piece of shit, and I got to be honest. Like I was actually kind of sad when I launched it up. I'd been waiting so long, and it just kind of feels pretty. Like it just feels a game. It feels like a game that just is meant to look pretty. It's just an upskin with a few separate things on Counter-Strike. So it's a very strange like feeling. They have a lot of polishing to do, and then it'll feel very good. But I don't like some of the changes they've made overall. But
Counter-Strike Source ran fine. I don't know why people needed new ones.
Yeah, I guess so. But a lot of people didn't like Counter-Strike. So there's a split in the community between 1.6 and Source, but that's a semantic thing. I just kind of wanted to bring that up, so I'll be busy doing that.
I just want shit to run well. That's all.
Yeah, so AI is going to do that. It's just give it time. You're probably you'll want to buy a new computer, but you may never have to, just because of optimization in the future. It's going to be weird. Like, all compute is going to 10x on a software level, in my opinion, maybe 1000x on certain cases, just because of refactor in every code base.
I'm gonna run Crysis.
Yeah, on anything.
On my fridge.
I'm serious.
My smart fridge.
I'm serious.
No, I mean, it makes sense. It makes sense. Have you played any of Baldur's Gate?
No, but I did see the clip of the. I think it's like
bear?
a dude. I think it's a dude fucking like a giant woman. She's like a troll.
Oh, that's the not the hobgoblin. That's
Yeah, it's something like that. Just, you barge into the room, and she's like, "You ruined the mood," and like fucking hoofs.
It's like an orc fucking a troll. Yeah.
It's so,
fucking hilarious. So funny.
That game.
Some
must
people
be
were
fun.
like,
"Have you played it?"
"Oh, it's super fun." I had 170 hours. I just did on my first playthrough.
That's what you've been fucking doing. Been wondering where you were. Jesus.
So I'm gonna take a long ass break, wait for them to do a bunch of updates if they do some DLC, and then I'll do like an evil playthrough, because I just did like a good guy bard.
Dude, so far on like Starfield, because like, you know, I'm super fucking into sci-fi. I love sci-fi shit. I love good sci-fi video games that they happen. They never happen. No, that's the sad story here. But the point is, like, I really want Starfield to be good, but I don't think it's gonna happen. I think it's going to take a while, and it's mostly going to be modders that fix it, like with most Bethesda games.
Yep. Which is, what are you going to do?
Yeah. But yeah, so I was thinking we end it here soon, but something I was going to say is, I don't know what your like schedule will be like once you get there, but it'll be nice to I want to bring you on to some of the like Twitter spaces that we'll eventually do, because that's pretty much where we'll eventually move these, just for live shows. And then what we'll probably end up doing on an interview sense, once we if we decide to go that path, we will bring people into a proper podcast program. There are them, it'll record the video proper and stuff like that, and then I can pretty quickly automate stuff like that. I've been spending a lot of time leisure lately, so I haven't been doing clips and stuff for the podcast, but we're pretty much at like the point where we will like accelerate everything here from here on out. It's all another thing is that because
do
you
have a TikTok specifically for Homebrew?
No.
Probably make one, upload that video.
Yeah. You see, there's like a limit to like my amount of like ethic when it comes work ethic when it comes to this type of stuff. Where like as long as I'm doing the stuff that I'm already doing and then slowly adding stuff, that's how things can improve.
Well,
it's a one man band.
Get Jasmine to run the TikTok.
That's possible.
I just make Jasmine run it.
Listen, any help?
She's typing.
Yeah, but anyways, my point is like
she agrees.
We'll probably get to the point where it's not just that, like there'll be like financial ways that this gets supported. That's like because this is like a labor of love for now. But here's where we're headed is AI is only ever going to be the only thing we talk about. So people that are interesting to talk about it will be people like us, kind of. So we're pretty close to that being where we're at. Like, you got the Gemini models coming and stuff like that. People want to hear stuff like this. So the Twitter spaces as well will be a big part of this. So we're at the, I would say the near the eclipse that we're going to pass through, so it's a lot of work to do, but I always appreciate these talks, Johnny. So that's how I'm going to end it, with your freeze frames constantly. It's very funny. You it's literally a few frames per minute, and it's just your like face like morphed in one way or another. It's just all right, Johnny.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, you'll see later, I guess. But yeah, anyways, gonna end it there. Thanks as always.
Yeah, had a great
Okay.
time.
Have a good one, everyone.